All right, thank you. We are at quorum, so we would like to get started. For the record, the time is now 10:01 a.m., and we have begun the Assembly Bill 32 Environmental Justice Advisory Committee public meeting. Welcome, everyone. My name is Jane Harrington from Leading Resources, and I'm the facilitator for today's meeting. I am excited to be here with you all virtually. To get started, I will cover some housekeeping and logistics. Spanish interpretation will be provided in the Zoom Spanish channel for the duration of the meeting. We have 2 interpreters with us for that. For those in the building, restrooms are outside the door to the left and down the hall by the drinking fountains. And in case of an emergency, please exit out the door and to the right down the stairs. We will have public comment periods today. For members of the public participating remotely, you will be able to raise your hand in Zoom to speak. When it's your turn, the host will ask you to unmute. And after you click on the unmute button on your end, you can begin to speak. We appreciate you staying on mute until it is your turn. In the event that *6 does not unmute you, Carb can unmute you. We'll be switching off between commenters in the room, if there are any, and also commenters attending virtually. For all public commenters, a few requests. Before providing your question or comment, please state your name and affiliation, if applicable, so that we know who is speaking. We will do our best to do the same in the room for members of the public to know who is talking. Please limit your comments to that agenda item. We intend to give every commenter 3 minutes to speak, and we'll let you know if any changes are required based on the number of comments. And while EJAC welcomes your comments, committee members will not be responding to public comment. Zoom Q&A and chat functions are turned off for participants. And now I'd like to introduce our Spanish interpreter that is on the line in the main channel. Carlos, if you could please introduce yourself and translate the information on the slide.
Yes, thank you. Good morning. Muy buenos días. Su servidor Carlos Díaz de León. Me acompaña también ya asignada Ruth Monroy al canal de español. Como acaban de indicar, se permitirán comentarios públicos durante la reunión en cada punto de la orden del día. Para quienes nos acompañan vía telefónica, puede levantar su mano virtual presionando *9 y cuando sea su turno, el anfitrión le pedirá abrir su micrófono para que pueda hacer su comentario. Para encender y apagar el micrófono, presionaría *6. En caso de que esto no funcione, el personal de la Junta de Recursos Atmosféricos, CARB, podrá abrir manualmente el micrófono para usted. Si está vía Zoom en plataforma, puede levantar su mano virtual en la barra al calce. Los comentarios se limitarán a 3 minutos cada quien y podrá modificarse en función del número de comentarios. Le pedimos por favor indicar su nombre y organización en su caso para saber quién está haciendo el comentario. Por su parte, CARB hará lo posible para hacer lo mismo para que ustedes sepan quién está haciendo uso de la voz. Gracias and thank you.
Thank you. For those who are participating in person, to prevent echoes, we request that you click on the symbol next to the unmute button as seen in number 1 on the screen. Also select leave computer audio as seen in number 2 on the screen. And please make sure to stay muted for the full duration of the meeting to avoid background noise as seen in number 3. Carlos, please provide the translated information on the slide.
Muy buenos días. Para quienes nos acompañan presencialmente, a fin de evitar ecos, solicitamos que haga clic en el símbolo justo al lado del botón para abrir su micrófono, como aparece en el número 1. De ahí seleccione abandonar audio en computadora o leave computer audio, como puede ver en el número 2. Y también les pedimos permanecer con el micrófono apagado durante toda la sesión a fin de evitar ruidos de fondo, como puede observar en el número 3. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will provide instructions and then we'll enable the Zoom interpretation features. When the interpretation globe appears at the bottom right corner of Zoom, as seen in item number 1 on the screen, please choose your preferred language as English or Spanish, as seen in number 2. Carlos, please provide these instructions.
Justo después de estas instrucciones, se me ingresarán al canal de español. Ya está habilitada la interpretación. Verán un globo terráqueo en la barra de controles de Zoom, como ven en el número 1. Simplemente le dan clic y seleccionan su idioma de preferencia, inglés o español, como pueden ver en el número 2. Gracias and thank you, over.
Thank you. And if for any reason you require technical Zoom support in today's meeting, please contact CARB staff, who is the person here, by email provided on this slide. We will do our best to assist you. Today's meeting is being recorded. CARB staff will post the recording to the EJAC Meetings and Events website in the coming weeks. And this is the same website where you can find all of the materials for today's meeting as provided on the slide. Could you please provide these instructions in Spanish?
En caso de que necesite asistencia técnica en Zoom durante la sesión de hoy, por favor comuníquese con el personal de la Junta de Recursos Atmosféricos CARB al correo electrónico que aparece en la parte superior izquierda de la pantalla y harán todo lo posible por asistirle. Se le informa también que la sesión de hoy se está grabando y el personal de CARB publicará la grabación en el portal de reuniones y eventos, Meeting and Events, de este Comité Asesor en Justicia Ambiental en las próximas semanas. Este es el mismo portal donde encontrarán todos los materiales para la sesión de hoy, como aparece en pantalla. Gracias and thank you, over.
Thank you. With that, I would like to begin the EJAC member roll call. As a reminder, this is the formal record of meeting attendance, and therefore we ask that all EJAC members respond when your name is called. Please state here your affiliation, pronouns, and if you are on or off camera, and if off, the reason for doing so consistent with the meeting requirements. For EJAC members who join the meeting later, we will be asking them to also verbally announce their attendance in the same fashion so it is clear all of the participants. So to begin, Marta Dina Aguelo.
Marta Dina Arguello, Physicians for Social Responsibility, Los Angeles, she, her pronouns.
Thank you. Juan Flores.
Good morning, everyone. Juan Flores with the Center on Race, Poverty, and Environment. Pronouns he, him. I am off camera as I'm out of state and I'm on a hotel and connectivity is really, really bad here. So to ensure that I remain connected, my camera is going to be off.
Thank you. Dr. Catherine Grupa.
Catherine Garupa, they and she pronouns, Central Valley Air Quality Coalition on camera.
Thank you. Kevin Hamilton. Looks like Kevin just joined us. Kevin, are you?
Yeah, sorry about that.
Okay.
Right in my way
Good morning.
to this machine. Good morning.
And just calling out roll, so you popped on right as I was calling out your name.
Oh, Kevin Hamilton, Medical Advocates for Healthy Air, him,
Okay.
pronouns.
Great. Thank you. John Harrell Jr. Thomas Helm.
Oh, Tom Helm, Valley Improvement Projects, he, him, his, attending virtually like everybody else.
Thank you. Matt Holmes.
Matt Holmes, California Environmental Justice Coalition, attending on camera. He, him.
Thank you. John Kevin Jefferson III.
Kevin Jefferson, Bay Area. I'm working from a conference center. Access is spotty, so I'll be on and off video.
Thank you. Ray Leon.
Buenos dias, good morning. I'm here on the west side of the San Joaquin Valley, and so service isn't that great. We got to work on that. We still have a big gap. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Luis Almeida.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Luis Olmedo. I'm the Executive Director of Comité Cívico del Valle.
Thank you. Joel Sherman Warren.
Hey, Young. I'm actually in a hotel room as well, and hopefully my internet stays stable. I actually don't know how it's working because I only have one bar, but I'm here, and she, her pronouns.
Good to have you. Thank you all, and I appreciate the virtual attendance for everybody that's traveling. All right. With that, I will now turn it over to our co-chairs to go over today's agenda.
Thanks. This is Catherine. I will give a highlight.
I think we lost.
Dr. Catherine, we're not able to hear you on this end. It looks like you're frozen.
Okay, so it was just wasn't just me losing her.
All right, Martha Dina, I'm going to kick it to you while we wait for Dr. Catherine to rejoin us. Thank you.
Okay, so today we're going to debrief from September 11th, the joint CARB board meeting briefly. Then we'll move on to a discussion around cap and trade program, a discussion on landfill methane. Then we'll have public comment. Then we'll go on to have an EJAC discussion on the natural working lands recommendation. Again, after that, public comment. We will then entertain the motion on natural and working lands recommendation. And then I believe this is about, approving the minutes for July 17th. EJAC meeting, again, more public comment, and then we will be approving a motion for the July 17th meeting minutes. And then again, public comment after the minutes are approved. And then we'll have some CARB announcements and next steps and closing remarks. So we have a really packed agenda today.
Thank you, Martha Dina. Thanks for stepping in. And Dr. Catherine, it looks like you were able to rejoin us.
Yeah, my Zoom froze and then it kicked me out. So for now, I'll leave my camera off and hope my internet stays stable.
Thank you. All right, we will now turn it over to EJAC co-chairs to cover the meeting agreements also.
Let's see, we're all familiar. Let's pay attention and equity of airtime, be present, be open and flexible, be realistic, and monitor our time to ability to get through the full agenda, seek out synergies in our work, say yes and. If virtual, we all know the rules, keep your camera on or let us know. But let somebody know. If you're leaving, again, I don't know if any of us are in person, so it's mostly virtual, so let somebody know if you're going to leave for a minute. Reach for and invite intuition and inspiration. Look for ways to move forward toward action where possible. Respect and trust the agenda and the process. Share responsibility for success.
Thank you. And thank you, Martha Dina, for noting all committee members are attending virtually today, so noted for the record. We'll now move to agenda item number 2, introductions and opening remarks. I will turn it over to Chanel Fletcher, CARB's Deputy Executive Officer for Equity, Communities, and Environmental Justice.
Jane, so much. And welcome everybody. I think as Jane, as you already mentioned, my name is Chanel. I do want to thank all the EJAC members, the CARB deputies, and the public for joining us today virtually. I did want to take a moment and follow up on some action items. So one of the things being at the September 11th joint meeting, we shared that we would provide a response on the EJAC's cap and trade resolution. I do want to confirm that we will indeed be providing a response to that resolution, and the response will be shared with all EJAC members. We had thought we were going to be able to do it sooner, but I did want to kind of come back and let everybody know that we're hoping to have a response by the end of this month and just make sure that the EJAC has sufficient time to look over and review that response. I also wanted to follow up and let everyone know that on behalf of our new chair, Lauren Sanchez, I did want to confirm that she received the EJAC co-chair letter last week with the requests on the solicitation process and the 2026 meetings. I did get a chance to meet with the EJAC co-chairs. We definitely appreciated the proposal outlined in the letter, and we'll be following up with the EJAC co-chairs in terms of responding to the asks in that letter. There are a few CARB announcements that were released that we wanted to make sure that everyone was aware of. So one was that this week we released a list of carbon capture, removal, utilization, and storage, or just CCUS, projects as a part of implementing Senate Bill 905 or SB 905. We anticipate releasing a regulatory framework for CCUS in early 2026, and that'll be followed by like a formal rulemaking package later in 2026. I did also want to elevate our light duty vehicle program and build awareness for a new set of vehicle emission standards to reduce pollution. Executive Order N2725 was signed by Governor Newsom in June, and it directs CARB to develop new regulations to reduce emissions from greenhouse gases, criteria pollutants, and toxic air contaminants. We are kicking off the rulemaking process for the Drive Forward Light Duty Vehicle Program on Tuesday, October 21st. I'll note that since this isn't on the agenda, we can't get into detail on it, but if folks are interested, our deputy over mobile sources, Chris Grenler, is here, and he's someone that you can follow up on to get more information on that. Finally, later this month, CARB will hold a public workshop on potential amendments to the California Cap and Invest program, which was formerly known as Cap and Trade. Our Deputy Executive Officer of Climate and Research, Rajendra Sahota, is here with us today, and she is available if there are any questions on the workshop or any questions as it relates to Cap and Invest. On the administrative side, CARB has been working very closely with our travel team to make sure that the EJAC travel claims and stipend payments are processed as expeditiously as possible. And if you have any kind of questions as it relates to your TECs as we close out the year, please do reach out to Ashley and our EJAC staff to make sure that we can address those. And since this is our last EJAC public meeting of 2025, I do just want to acknowledge really all the effort and time that has gone into this process. I want to say a huge thank you to our co-chairs, Dr. Catherine, Mark Bedina, and Kevin Jefferson. I know that our outgoing chair, Leanne Randolph, also expressed our gratitude, but wanted to reiterate that as well. I want to thank all of the EJAC members that joined, that contributed, that participated. Thank you so much. We do kind of look forward to developing that EJAC solicitation. And I just want to make sure that people are very clear that even though this is our last EJAC public meeting of 2025, the work of the EJAC is going to continue. We did meet with the co-chairs. They did indicate that they're going to continue to meet with the subgroups on topics of interest throughout the rest of this year. And then we will be following up, as I mentioned before, with the co-chairs to discuss the planned 2026 schedule. With that said, I will turn it over to, I believe, to Dr. Catherine.
Good morning again, everyone. Zoom already kicked me a second time, so please do interrupt if my connection is unstable, and I can try joining by phone, but for now, I'll try to open us up with opening remarks. So as we're in the fall and the days are getting darker, we're naturally in a time of reflection on many, many things, including the end of an intense legislative session. And in my opening remarks, I want to focus specifically on EJAC's work. For those of us who joined at the beginning of this iteration of EJAC, we are going on 5 years now, and it has definitely been a journey. I think on reflection, we should celebrate that we have made some progress in making necessary change within the Air Resources Board itself. I want to acknowledge the dialogue with the board itself, especially members who have directly engaged, like former member Gideon Krakoff, Chair Randolph, for making the EJAC a permanent body instead of just a group that convenes during the scoping plan process, because there is so much work that happens in the in-between time. And current board members, Diane Takvorian, Susan Shaheen, and Cliff Rechtschaffen, who I know have engaged directly and attended our meetings and supported asks for more dialogue and engagement with the EJAC. I also want to appreciate the support work behind the scenes from Ashley and Karina in the Office of Environmental Justice, and reiterate the praise for the work on equitable building decarbonization that we were able to highlight at the September 11th joint meeting with the board. I also think it's important to acknowledge that there is still a lot of room for growth, especially in dialogue with authors of the scoping plan and staff of the Industrial Strategies Division who oversees that process, and the staff leadership at CARB, executive officers and deputy executive officers who are making decisions about environmental justice communities, the Environmental Justice Advisory Committee, and CARB's climate programs. Unfortunately, there have been notable times where we have not been consulted, such as last-minute invitations to speak at workshops on priority issues, as important as those invitations are, or even not being informed of matters pertinent to us, such as having it announced at the joint meeting that October would be our last meeting as this iteration of the EJAC, although I understand from subsequent conversations that hopefully the door is still open for us to have more public meetings in 2026. That being said, the uncertainty about whether or not this is actually our last public meeting ever as this iteration of the EJAC is unsettling, and for me, it risks undermining the progress that we have made. I, as a co-chair, am very protective of this work and want to underscore what's been announced and shared via email that Martha, Dina, and I collaborated on a co-chair's letter where we recommended next steps and offered our support for making sure that there is a smooth transition with continuity of the work that is hopefully contributes to the overall sustainability of this committee. Personally, I'm concerned that a gap between this EJAC and the next EJAC would leave open issues that we unfortunately remain on opposite sides of with CARB leadership, such as the charter updates that we began and then had to stop because we were on opposite ends of the spectrum on critical functional issues like how many meetings a year we should have, and decided to set it aside in order to focus on the substantive policy work. I would hate to see changes made in the absence of EJAC or with a new EJAC who hasn't really had time to get up to speed. I also personally am very sensitive to critiques of EJ advocacy as the party of no, and want to be clear that I raise these issues in the public forum out of love and compassion for frontline communities and for the importance of the work that the EJAC does in supporting and giving voice to frontline community issues. And I want to acknowledge that certainly there are ways that EJAC can step up as well, and that we do take time internally to debrief and hold ourselves accountable to showing up more, to putting in more work, even though it genuinely is a huge stretch of capacity. Thank you to all who have contributed, and for me, especially Carbon Markets Workgroup volunteers. There have been so many thought partners who have contributed to our work in a completely uncompensated fashion simply because they care about the issues, and our resolution and work on the low carbon fuel standard and cap and trade are truly better because of your contributions. To Martha Dina for being my co-conspirator and thought partner in this process. As co-chairs, we put in so much work outside of the public meetings in order to help things run well from both a process perspective and an outcomes perspective. And I do remain very proud of what we've accomplished over the last few years. And I also want to acknowledge and thank those who have shared the impact of EJAC's work from their perspective, because it is that feedback in moments of doubt and uncertainty and feeling under attack within the agency of CARB, that those voices, the people who talk about how important the issues that we give voice to are, and the community members who come speak and share their stories, that truly has been what has motivated me and kept me going. And with that, I did purposely try to help my opening remarks be a segue to the next agenda item, which is debriefing the joint meeting with the CARB board from September 11th. So I will close there.
In true co-chair collaboration fashion, I'm going to do the closing comments, and so we can move on to the agenda.
Thank you. We will now move to agenda item number 3, the debrief from the September 11th joint meeting between EJAC and CARB. I believe I'm turning it over to CARB staff to start that, or is that EJAC to start?
It is EJAC to start.
Thank you. All right, co-chairs, I'll turn it over to you. Discussion on outcomes and debrief the outcomes from the meeting. Any observations from those in attendance at the meeting?
Did we lose
Go for it.
Catherine and
No,
Erica?
I'm actually being quiet to leave space for others.
I thought that Dr. Catherine's comments, summed up my thoughts of the meeting in her kind of opening comments. It was good to talk positively about the collaboration on building decarb. It was, good to get out, honest opinions on some of the other topics that maybe we haven't, found the collaboration and partnership with CARB that we were hoping for. It was kind of surprising, and I had to like process it for a minute that we were being told like for the first time during the meeting that we wouldn't be meeting anymore for several months. And then there was confusion about the November meeting because it was still on the calendar, and I thought, maybe CARB had changed their mind. They might still. So a little confusion, a little positivity, a little status quo. I don't know. Those are my thoughts off the top of my head.
Thank you, Tom.
Just catch up with board members that I only get to see in person a couple times a year. So
Thank you. Luis, I see your hand, and then Matt.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity to say a few words. I have, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to navigate what seems to be an accident in front of me. Apologize for that. So I'm inspired by Dr. Catherine White's opening or closing chapter. A lot of you know that I've been very outspoken over the years, trying to uplift the issues in my community and support communities alike that are dealing with environmental justice issues across the state of California. Sure, a lot of you have seen me just go quiet. When I'm in a space where I don't feel that my voice is any longer being heard, being appreciated, being responded to, very seldom have I come to a point where I just go quiet. I want to thank the chairs. I want to thank my colleagues at this advisory. But I want to let you all know that those efforts to silence us, those efforts to replace us, those efforts to undermine the progress that we have done since my father.
Hey, Greg, this is Kevin Hamilton.
Since my father began this organization 36 years ago, and I've been in it 26 years ago, nothing that those with ill intentions have done anything to quiet us and replace us. I just want to be clear, these are my final words, that what they have done and accomplished is remove themselves from our continued success at elevating and uplifting environmental justice. I look forward to continuing to work with California Air Resources Board staff who have good intentions, who are committed, and who are respectful, and who are devoted to environmental justice. Thank you.
Thank you, Luis. Matt, and then Kevin.
Yeah, I appreciated the comments from our co-chairs just now about the remaining work to be done, and also just want to call out that there were multiple comments from multiple members of the board who direct this institution, particularly board member Tykvorian, that we have a lot of work to get done, and there's no time to be canceling meetings when there's such an urgent time for California to lead on this climate crisis.
Thank you, Matt. Kevin?
Well, sorry, having a little technical issue here. So I'm having a real technical issue here. Give me just a second, okay?
Yeah, take your time. Other members, discussion on the joint meeting? We'll give Kevin just a moment. Dr. Catherine, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to encourage members, if they haven't had the opportunity yet, to look at the letter that Martha, Dana, and I submitted. Because of the Bagley-Keene restrictions, we needed to do it sub quorum. But if members have other ideas and are willing to volunteer time to be able to help with the transition of EJAC, you all are always invited to be able to share that feedback. And I want to make sure that people had an opportunity to look at it. And for members of the public, it is posted online as well.
Thank you, Dr. Catherine. Kevin, we'll try it again.
Sorry about that. Working on it. Let's go with video and see how it plays.
Oh.
So, as far as the board meeting was concerned, personally, I thought, and thank you to the co-chairs, by the way, for all the hard work you've done this last year and this last 4 or 5 years, because without your hard work, honestly, I don't believe we would be here today. So thank you for that. The meeting itself, I thought, went over well. I think Tom has already pointed out several of the issues that we had great discussions on. It felt like we were meeting with our peers, and the board members were very active in conversation with us on those issues. And it was easy to pick out that in the various areas that we were 90% aligned on pretty much everything. And it was more a call to action in my mind, that the board felt that there should be more communication and work directly with EJAC. I myself have suggested a board committee that could be set up, a joint board EJAC subcommittee that could meet on a semi-regular basis without costing CARB an arm and a leg. Betting a number of those people would volunteer to do a meeting like that for free, though they shouldn't have to. I felt very strongly again that the sudden bomb that was dropped on everybody in the middle of the meeting was, not to be rude, but as they say in the old days, bad form. That should have been noticed at least 30 days ahead of time, so everybody could have been prepared. The idea that in this insane, and I'm using that word intentionally, environment that we're dealing with as we move forward, implementing the scoping plan and the things that are in need of attention on a regular basis, without wide gaps in between, is just not appropriate. And I'm not sure how that happened or why it, well, and we all have our ideas and some on the inside, but from the outside, it's almost like it's trying to slow things down instead of speed things up. And instead of facilitating, it's, throwing something under the wheels so that it again slows everything down. So hopefully, and the co-chair letter is very powerful. I look forward to seeing the official reply. That's about it. Thank you. And by the way, and thank you for the staff that support us here and our facilitator. You guys really work hard to communicate with us and get us in the chairs when it need to be, and to get information for us when we ask for it. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Jill, comments?
Yeah, I would like to echo some of what's being said and shared. I do hope there is a response to the co-chair's letter. I felt like I had lost a meeting somewhere and missed out the direction that things were happening, and I am fearful that things are almost seemingly, and again, I can't say this about the staff that we work with because I think they work really hard, but I feel like somewhere above is working to slow it all down. And that's concerning. So, I really feel like the team has really come together in a space that all of our sleeves are rolled up and work to be done. And now it's almost like we have to begin all over again. And that's a little concerning. So again, I appreciate everyone that we've worked with and everyone on the group. So that's what I have to add.
Thank you, Jill. Other committee members? Ray Leon?
Buenos dias, everybody. It's getting cold out here now. But so Ray Leon here, Executive Director of the LEAP Institute, Mayor, City of Huron. Well, first, let me just say I'm forever grateful, first of all, because we are here together and we have been able to create this body and do a lot of work to improve, I think, the EJ situation. Of course, there's a whole lot more work to do, especially if we take into consideration the challenge at the federal level. But with that, I'm also forever hopeful that we're able to continue that work, that we're able to continue to see a body within this institution that could be able to be critical of the institution itself, to continue to help it grow with compassion, to ensure that our families are taken care of. A lot of our families have not even the knowing that this institution exists, and many times don't realize the impacts that are affecting their everyday life, the health, and so forth. But if not for the groups, organizations, and coalitions that all of us are a part of or have been founders of or active participants in, communities would know nothing about it. This EJAC is really a critical piece, and we need to make sure that it maintains itself in a way where the values are solid, with the same conviction that you see all of these members display or have been displaying, not just with their words, but with their actions on the ground throughout the state. I'm forever hopeful that we continue to ensure that the EJAC is something valid, right? I'm forever skeptical that it may not be. We've seen situations where we've grown some beautiful, strong, and very relevant elements to inject into the institutions, the governmental entities, and have observed sometimes they be co-opted, they be neutralized, they become part of the system that we intended to change, but then it starts drawing it back to normalize what needs to be strong for the health and well-being of our people, for the health and well-being of farm workers. Like here on the west side of the San Joaquin Valley, here in my Huron area, we have a lot of areas that are very rich in revenue, but very poor in income, in wealth. There is none. And so it's the voices that join here together to have a direct conversation with the agency folks is something extremely valuable, and we can't afford that it be co-opted, that something happened to where less of our voice is taken serious, where it's just about checking a box, but there's no result. We got to make sure that does not happen. And, if that means more policies, okay, well, then let's have that conversation. But just learning today that we get the announcement that this is the last public meeting, that's really, really, I hope that's not a foreshadow, to what to expect in terms of the undermining of the voice and the knowledge of the leaders that are working towards improving the situation for environmental justice communities. Forever skeptical. I need to be. We need to be, and we need to make sure that that our new chair at the ARB have a strong understanding of why this exists. I've been participating in these EJ meetings since before I was on the EJAC and before it was called EJAC. When I remember Marta Arguello was up on the dais there in Oakland at the Department of Public Health, with the first time I think that all the agencies were pulled together to try to figure out how EJ was going to be incorporated after the state of California was the first to take serious the presidential I forget the 18248 or something. It was a shot in the arm for environmental justice countrywide, but California is the one that took it seriously. And this is a continuance of that, but I think California is the one that took it most seriously. The leadership stepped up, and the government of the state of California helped bridge. And here we are. And I think we got to still keep on building those bridges, right, to make it stronger, not to steer from that. And I have hope that we, of course, will continue the struggle, but I'm kind of skeptical because we've seen it in the past where we've created bodies for EJ, and later they become co-opted and not have the strength or the ability to create the path to ensure better quality of life for our farm worker families and other low-income families. So I want all of you guys to process that. A lot of folks in the agency that are staff that get employed, you may not come from an environmental justice community. You may be familiar with the EJ community because you've cruised through one or you've gotten a tour of one, but it's always different because when you grow up in one or when you continue to live in one, as I do, as the mayor of the city of Huron, on the west side, which is even the more low-income part of the community, you know, which is a lovely part of the community. I know all my folks, and growing up, you have a deeper understanding of the struggle. You have a deeper understanding of the challenge, and I think that helps really create the conviction, regardless of where you're at, to make sure you help make the necessary moves to improve the situation. You know, sometimes for staff, it's just checking the box. All right, we got it done. Let's move on. No. Let's have that conviction. Let's have that compassion to make sure that we make the real change and that we keep that change. All right. I mean, it's a terrible situation nationwide right now. My families are very, very feeling very assaulted right now. Let's not have that same thing exist in regards to their environmental health. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. Juan, I see your hand, and I think that'll conclude this item. Go ahead, Juan.
I'll keep my comment short. I think that everything that needed to be said was already very well said by all of my colleagues in this call today. I'll just add that to everything that has been said is the sadness of the fact that such an amazing committee such as the EJAC is being attacked the way that it is, because quite frankly, when it comes to real people fighting the good fight every day for environmental justice in their communities, this advisory board is the only little thing that gives credibility to an agency that has done nothing but protect the interest of industries rather than the rights of clean water, and safe places to live for many Californians. Again, it's really sad that the little credibility that the board CARB has, it's attacked this way. I really hope that California, in the midst of all of the political, environmental, social crises that we're going through, that we're able to reflect that we don't need more bureaucracy, that we need more people's voices being lifted up every day. Because at the end of the day, it is the people that suffer the most, the ones that are the experts, the ones that know the best solutions for their communities. And I think all of my colleagues and myself, we were here and are here just because of that, to lift those voices, those voices that have been silent, that have been forced to be silent for many years, those faces that have been forced to be hidden for many years and that continue to be forced to be hidden because of all the political upheaval that our country is living. But here's the best part, that I think for my colleagues and myself, EJAC is not the only place. We know the resistance. We know how to organize. We know how to move forward. We have in the past. We will continue to do it in the future. And I really, really would like to thank all my colleagues for everything. And I really hope, not only hope, I know that the environmental justice movement is going to be nothing but stronger moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, seeing no other hands, that'll conclude discussion on this item. We will move to agenda item number 4, the EJAC discussion on the cap and trade program. I'll turn it over to the co-chairs to introduce our guest speaker.
Thank you, Jane. This is Dr. Catherine again. As CARB continues its active rulemaking on the cap and trade program, the Carbon Markets Work Group wanted to leverage this opportunity to continue critical conversations. Today, we're going to hear from Dr. Barbara Haya, Senior Fellow at the Center for Environmental Public Policy and Director of the Berkeley Carbon Trading Project from the University of California at Berkeley, particularly about offsets and direct environmental benefits, which are features of the program that are directly within CARB's authority. I'll pass it over to you, Dr. Haya, and thank you again for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you so much. It's really an honor to be here. And can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Fantastic. Okay. Yeah, it's really an honor to be invited to speak to the EJAC, and I'm really looking forward to the discussion. So I direct the Berkeley Carbon Trading Project at UC Berkeley. Our project is dedicated to the study of the effectiveness of carbon trading programs with a focus on carbon offsetting programs. And I myself have studied carbon offset quality for over 20 years, starting with my study of the Kyoto Protocol's offset program with field research in India, and found that many of those projects didn't actually reduce emissions because the program was mainly paying project developers to build projects they were building anyway. I then turned attention to California's offset program, as well as the voluntary carbon market at large, and have found myself, as well as many other researchers, very high levels of over-crediting across basically all major carbon offset programs to date. So, this matters because offsets are used by emitters to meet emission reduction requirements instead of reducing their own emissions. So if the credits don't represent the tons of carbon dioxide equivalent reduced or removed that they claim to, that weakens the carbon target. If you want to go to the next slide. Thanks. So for the next around half hour, I'm going to make a presentation in 2 parts. So describe how California's carbon offset program works. There's a rich published literature on the outcomes of the program with a focus on the Forest Protocol, which has generated close to 3/4 of credits, and that most credits don't represent real emissions reductions, and then discuss the 2025, the cap and trade extension bills that were just passed that create opportunities for improvements by mandating regulatory action. And yeah, I believe that the environmental justice and the science communities have real roles to play in supporting CARB and implementing sound regulation in those processes aligned with the science and justice. And then the second part, so that's like a 25-minute presentation, and then a shorter presentation is on the DEBS mandate. So in 2017, when the first extension of the cap and trade program happened, the bill extended the cap and trade program from 2020 all the way through 2030 to address environmental justice concerns that carbon trading and especially carbon offsets allowed emitters to continue to emit in EJ communities by buying these inexpensive credits instead of reducing their own emissions. What resulted in that bill was that the offset program was cut in half in its size, and half of that smaller amount was required to have direct environmental benefits in the state. So I'm going to discuss how direct environmental benefits is defined and interpreted, the outcomes so far. So the outcomes from the first commitment period after the DEBS mandate was put in place, sort of from 2021 to 2023. In that period, even though the DEBS mandate is that half of credits must have direct environmental benefits in the state, 2/3 of credits are still from out-of-state projects. And 1/3 of DEBS credits used are from out-of-state projects and that have little in-state benefit. And then the last thing to say just at the start is this stuff is pretty technical, so I'd be very happy to take questions on any slide if anything isn't clear. Okay, next slide. Thanks. Okay, so how does California's offset program work as a part of our cap and trade program? California allows emitters covered under the state's cap and trade program to purchase offsets instead of reducing their emissions. And the limit on the amount of offsets that can be used are 4% of emissions from 2021 to 2025 and 6% from starting next year for 5 years. And that 4% is half of what it was 2020 and earlier. But that 4% and 6% is still a very large quantity. So those are percentages of emissions, and it translates into a significant portion of reductions. So the first bar in the graph is, so CARB in their 2017 scoping plan predicted how much the state would need to reduce its emissions during 2021 to 2030 to meet the 2030 target, and it estimated that to be a little over 600 million tons of CO2 equivalent. It then estimated, that the suite of other policies, not the cap and trade policy, but renewables portfolio standard, low carbon fuel standard, clean cars initiatives, et cetera, would reduce more than half would result in more than half of those reductions, leaving 38% to be mopped up by the carbon price created by the cap and trade program. So that's at 38%. So then what is the maximum offset limit? So 4% in the first 5 years and 6% in the starting next year. If the maximum offset limit is used, it would translate into 22% of the total emissions reductions needed in this decade, and over half of the reductions expected to be caused by the cap and trade program. So what that means is that the quality of our offset program really matters for meeting our targets. Next slide. So California defines a set of project types that are allowed to participate in our offset program. The projects can be anywhere in the United States. 71% is improved forest management. And then there are these other project types, including ODS CFC refrigerant, which I'll discuss under the DEBS in the DEBS discussion, mine methane capture, mostly from coal mines, manure methane digester, and then 3 project types that are eligible, but there have been no credits generated to date, likely because the cost of monitoring and of carrying out the projects is too high. Next slide. So the improved forest management part of the Forest Protocol has been widely studied. It's been widely studied because it's such a significant part of California's cap and trade program. But those credits from our IFM protocol also has generated around a third of all credits from all offset projects in the US, including from the voluntary market. And what I'll do is I'll go through, we have studies that have focused on key quality elements of the protocol. And the first thing to say is how the protocol works. So, excuse me, our IFM protocol allows any forest landowner in the US to generate credits if they commit to, if they hold more carbon on their forested lands than the baseline, where the baseline is for most projects set at the average carbon per acre for that forest type. And they commit to holding that for a 100-year period. If you want to go to the next slide. So here's one project, ACR 378, and it's typical. So here's sort of how the protocol works. So for this project, the initial carbon stocks on this project land is at the intersection of the orange line and the blue line. At the start of the project, they set the baseline. So they set it by modeling over 100 years what they would do without the offset program. So they model that blue line, and the baseline is the average, and that's the gray line. Their baseline is about equal to the minimum allowed. So it's about equal to the average carbon per acre for that forest type. In the first year, and the orange line is what they predict the carbon in this forested area will be over the 100-year lifetime of the project. In the first year, basically, they're credited for A, that is the difference between what they're holding already on their landscape compared to the baseline, what they say they would do without the offset income. And then every year thereafter, they're paid for whatever the growth is. So in this particular project, they would be paid B over around 20 years. Okay, next slide. So the most important quality factor is, what is the baseline? What would that landowner really have done were it not for the offset income? And these three studies study the accuracy of the baselines used by the set of projects that are participating in ARB's protocol. The second two use remote sensing imagery to compare the carbon on the project lands compared to past management and compared to also to similar forested areas to see if they see a distinct change in how the forests are managed, sort of equal to the number of credits, this large number of credits issued. Those two studies found no significant difference in management from the past to management during the offset period, and no discernible difference between management on the participating offset lands and similar control lands. That doesn't mean that the protocol isn't having any impact at all. Likely the impact is really going to be over time because these landowners have taken a 100-year commitment not to deplete the carbon on the landscape. But what this means is that they're credited a large number of credits today that can be used by businesses in place of reducing their emissions today in exchange for this 100-year commitment with a high uncertainty in how much of an impact that commitment will have. Yeah, there you go. so that's the baseline issue. Do you want to go to the next slide? So let's say for this particular project that blue line, and please feel free to interrupt me at any time. I know this is, yeah, I want to make sure that people understand the slides. So let's say the baseline is accurate. Let's say this landowner really would have significantly depleted the carbon on the landscape, as predicted here, down to the baseline, a significant reduction in carbon were it not for the offset income, and they do that through timber harvesting. And they're saying, you know, because of the offset program, they're not going to remove that timber. Leakage occurs when there's some reduction in timber harvesting on some lands, but without a change in the demand for timber products, that timber harvesting gets displaced to somewhere else. There's a lot of uncertainty in how much gets displaced. At the time that I studied this a few years ago, the best available research showed an 80% leakage rate. You know, you reduce harvesting on one set of land and 80% gets displaced to somewhere else. A recent article came out saying on average it's 40% when you look long term, but let's take a look at the numbers here. So in the first year of the project, the landowner basically earns credits equal to A, minus several deductions, where leakage is one of those deductions. So that's A. If they were deducted a 40% leakage rate, they would be deducted that first gold bar. So like A minus that second bar, so 60% of A is what they would earn credits for. A or B uses a 20% leakage rate, which isn't based in the literature, but that would imply that they would get 80% of A with a 20% deduction for leakage. But actually what happens is A or B takes an average leakage rate over 100 years. So it divides that 20% leakage by 100, and it's that bar that I couldn't make small enough to reflect the true value is that last very thin bar is what is actually subtracted from the credit issuance in the first year to account for leakage. Next slide.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
This is Kevin.
Yeah.
Sorry. If you back up to slide, well, never mind. We'll take care of this, I guess. So what I want to understand is how well does CARB's team understand this industry? I mean, we've moved a long way from clear cutting back in the 60s and 70s. Disaster to the environment and to the folks who lived in those environments and had lived there for thousands of years. So now in the forest industry, they've moved into cyclic harvesting. And I visited these places and they this is a product. And it's important to think of it that way. So if they cut all their product down, they don't make any money anymore. So they're going to be growing these trees in cycles. The person that I talked to on one up in Oregon said they used a 10-year cycle, but said some use less, but the timber needs that long to get big enough to be harvestable. But they do it in sections and have the other sections are growing at different speeds as well. So it never actually goes away. So I'm just trying to figure out when I look at this, I mean, how is this backed up by anything that takes into account how this industry actually manages its forests, and in what way will that change in order to validate their receipt of this money? I just don't see how you do that, especially on the time horizons that they work on in their different areas. They actually block them out. It's a really interesting thing to see from above because it ends up looking like sort of a checkerboard that's 50 miles by 50 miles square. Do I have it wrong there?
Yeah, I think what's going on is that with an offset protocol, you need to write a set of rules that applies to all forests in the US. So you write a set of rules that is based on the average, where there's going to be some overcrediting from some participating lands and then some undercrediting from other participating lands. If you go up one slide, the first article listed their systematic overcrediting. What we did, or what Grayson actually led this. What he did was take a look at where participating forest lands are located within the assessment areas. That is, the U.S. is divided into these different regions, and with different sort of layers in each one. Each sort of region/layer represents a forest type. And what he found was that that most participating forest lands are on the side of that assessment area that naturally has more carbon. So the A or B approach would work if the participating lands were evenly and sort of randomly distributed. But the incentive system is that those forest landowners that are already managing the land to hold more carbon are going to be the first to participate. That's what we see. So it's not the average participants, and that's how it leads to overcrediting. And just one more thing to say, I think certainly it's possible that they will deplete the timber on their land significantly. But for many of these lands, it's not probable. I don't know if that
comes
helps.
back to what I'm saying. I maybe we're talking past each other. I'm not sure, but I'm talking about reality in this industry. These guys do not use up their timberland, or they no longer make money. So their whole focus is, how do I conserve and manage the timberland I have in such a way that this investment carries on for, like you say, 100 years, and some of these operations have been going for 100 years, but they're depleting their stock. Is whether or not you have carbon credits or not is madness for them. I mean, that doesn't meet their business model. So it just feels like this model flew right past the business model without really assessing what would they have to do on this existing finite piece of property. What would they have to do? And again, continuing to operate their business in a way that works for them.
Yeah.
So what would they have to do to actually, increase the amount of sequestration or carbon harvesting that they would have to create these offsets?
And just to say, I completely agree. I completely agree with you that the protocol is not working, and there's very strong evidence that it's not working for the reasons that you mentioned.
It's underwriting their business at that point.
Yeah.
It's good. It's good money.
Yeah.
And it's going, most of it, out of the state. That's the thing that really blows me away, is how much of this is leaving even the West Coast. Not to say that those folks don't need help managing their forest in Idaho and North Dakota and all the way into the Appalachians, but Yeah, it just doesn't make sense.
I agree.
Okay, thanks. If it doesn't, good. It's not making sense, so I get the picture. Okay. Sorry to take up so much time to come to that point.
Thank you. I do know, Kevin, you've got your hand raised, and then we'll want to get back to the presentation, make sure we have some discussion at the end also. Kevin, go ahead. Kevin Jefferson, sorry.
Yeah, I was just wondering, is it possible for you to speak for a minute about how this offset operation is policed? Are there any actual inspections? How often are those inspections? Has there ever been an inspection on any of the out-of-state operations? Just because this sounds like a lot of numbers on a piece of paper, funny math, and it doesn't add up. So please explain the policing efforts of this.
Great. Yeah, great question. So, so the way the offset program works, and this is ARB's offset program, it's also basically all other offset programs, is so the administrator, ARB, or the offset registry writes the rules, the methodology, and then every participating project needs to hire a third-party auditor. So the project developer puts together their project design document, describes document monitoring documents. Current process is one, the auditor is tasked not with helping ensure that the reductions truly have happened, but they're asked to make sure that the paperwork complies with the methodology, the rules. So they're not being asked whether the baseline is likely, whether it's, whether it could reasonably actually happen. They're asked whether the baseline is allowed to be used by the methodology. So the real policing is in the writing of the methodology, I believe. The other problem with the current system is that it's the project developer who hires a third-party auditor. And when the project developer hires that auditor, they want to rule leniently so that they can be hired again, especially in the context of high levels of uncertainty, such as, if they were asked to assess whether the baseline is accurate, rather than just if it were to meet the rules of the methodology.
So it sounds like you're pretty knowledgeable on this. Do you have any evidence of anything being actually investigated by a human being?
So the third-party verifier does a site visit. They make sure, through sample, that the inventory looks accurate, that the quantification methods, work, that they used, that all the numbers and calculations comply with the rules of the methodology.
Is it possible to share the list of the third parties that are involved with this process?
Yes,
so that
and it's all
cross-referenced.
Absolutely. It's all online. But I can send around, maybe I'll if one of you could just let me know who I send that to, I could send it around to send to the full EJAC. But to say, I believe it's very easy to see, and it should be on ARB's website under its offset issuance table, who the verifiers are. Great. So perhaps I go ahead. Thank you for your questions. So yes, so we saw how ARB is calculating leakage, and a study that I released in 2019 that was later published in a journal. I crunched the numbers for the full set of IFM projects to that date and recalculated the number of credits issued in the first column if ARB had used different leakage rates, 20, 60, 80. And then the second column, if they deducted it at the same time that the reduced harvesting was credited, rather than averaging the leakage and sort of paying back leakage over 100 years. If the 40% rate is correct, then ARB projects, the IFM projects are over crediting by 51%. Only half of the credits are real just from the leakage accounting, ignoring baselines and the other factors. Next slide. Then there's also an issue of durability, that is, in forest projects, because you're being credited for holding carbon in forests in exchange for reducing emissions of fossil fuels. You need to account for the risk of reversal, that if there's a fire or disease and that carbon is released, it undoes a lot of the benefits. The way ARB handles this is with a buffer pool or an insurance pool that they calculate what is the risk of fire, of disease, of other types of reversal at the start of the project. And then that percentage of credits is put aside into a pooled insurance or buffer pool, like an insurance program. Any project where there is an unintentional reversal caused by natural causes, not by the harvesting or the project developer themselves, then they can use the credits from the buffer pool. What these two studies have found is that the buffer pool, the reversal risk estimates are far lower than the true risk to date, and even lower than the risk the increasing risk with climate change. And the second article that the buffer pool will likely deplete or finish its credits well before the 100-year lifetimes of these projects. And then the last issue of perverse incentives is, if you want to go to the next slide. So Claudia Herbert led a study on the California offset projects. If you want to go to the next slide. Thanks. So she led a study of the California-based projects, and she asked, many California forests are overstocked and at high risk of fire risk, of catastrophic fire, because of decades of suppressed fire. And the California's Healthy Forest Initiative gives grants to forest landowners to thin their forests or for fuels reduction. And she compared the forests that are in California that are participating in the offset program with projects that are participating in the Healthy Forest Initiative or have received Healthy Forest Initiative grants. And what she finds is that many of the offset projects are on lands that would have been eligible for these Healthy Forest thinning grants. And using remote sensing imagery, also saw that the offset projects were less well managed and less healthy than the similar lands that received the Healthy Forest grants. What that means is that California's offset program, by mandating that landowners or making landowners that deplete the carbon on their forests to pay back those credits, works against efforts to support healthier forests in overstock lands in California. So next slide. So then the question then is, why, like what we see is under our IFM protocol, Improved Forest Management Protocol, we see many areas where the methodology is written in a way that doesn't align with the science. But we also see, what we discussed, this adverse selection where the first projects or the projects that are participating are those that have to do the least, really make the least changes in order to generate credits. And this is systematic to how offsets work and is a real challenge. It has been a real challenge for all major offset programs to date. And like I mentioned at the beginning, almost all, or let's say all major offset programs are overcrediting substantially, and it's common for projects to overcredit by 10 times. And this is my understanding of why. So when it comes to offsets, there are high levels of uncertainty and complexity where, we know how to measure emissions. It's much harder to measure emissions reductions because you have to measure them against a counterfactual scenario that never happened. What is that baseline? What would these landowners have done were it not for the offset program? And then the calculations and data sets are really complex. There's also information asymmetry where the landowner themselves knows a lot more about what they would have done were it not for the offset income than any third-party auditor or CARB or any administrator. And that uncertainty is being deliberated by a set of market actors that have aligned interests, where both the credit buyers and the sellers benefit financially from excess credits. And then you get adverse selection, which is, where when you have a performance standard that allows anyone that meets eligibility criteria to participate, the first to participate are the ones that would have done it anyway or have the least change that they need to make to earn the most credits. Right. Okay. So two more quick slides in this section. So next slide. So there are opportunities.
Yeah. We'll pause for a moment and have somebody muted. Can we take a moment and gone down asking our facility.
COVID was hitting. They were like crazy.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Sorry, Barbara, go ahead.
So in the two extension bills that were just recently passed, there's some opportunity for improving quality in them. So let's go over that. So there's an Assembly bill and a Senate bill. So the Assembly bill, here's what they did. Here's what's included related to offsets. The offset limit for the offset program continues. The offset limit remains 6%, and the 50% direct environmental benefits in the state requirement continues through 2045. A change that was made was that offsets are now under the cap, or starting in 2031 will be under the cap like in Washington State. What that means is that so ARB's current offset program up until 2030, if any offsets are used, that increases the emissions, or it puts one more credit or one more permit to emit into the system of allowances and offset credits. So you can get an increase in emissions in the state above what the cap is. So by bringing it under the cap, what it means is that if any offset credits are used in the next period, that number of fewer allowances are released and auctioned and released into the system. So it basically maintains the cap. If you use offsets, then the number of allowance credits that are made available is equally less. What that means is that poor offset quality no longer weakens the cap, but it still wastes money. We're still putting money into projects that meet the methodology rules on paper, rather than in priority projects in the state. It also means that offsets will play a much smaller role in cost containment. ARB, it also in this bill, CARB shall develop approaches to increase offset projects in the state, and CARB shall consider developing additional compliance offset protocols to address sectors not covered by the cap and trade program. Now let's go to the Senate bill, the next slide. So, and actually, if you could go one more slide where I've highlighted a few of these. So by December 31st, at the end of 2026, CARB shall conduct a study on the contribution of offset projects to progress towards California's climate goal, evaluation of the potential for changes to the definition of direct environmental benefits to the state, recommendations for how in-state offset projects could be more attractive for development, recommendations for alternative valuation methodologies or criteria for in-state offset projects, and also no later than the beginning of 2029, the state board shall update all existing compliance offset programs to ensure that they reflect best available science, and those evaluations shall be repeated every 5 years thereafter, basically. And I want to highlight, for now, the two gold highlighted elements. So, so for the second gold one, the state board shall update all existing compliance offset protocols to reflect best available science, especially on the improved forest management project type. There's a very rich and conclusive body of science showing overcrediting and also indicating ways that ARB can amend that protocol to avoid overcrediting, such as the use of dynamic baselines, mathematically appropriate ways of accounting for leakage, better leakage rate, better using the latest science for estimating the risk of reversal, et cetera. And that is something that I think our whole EJ and science community can help support ARB in making methodology update decisions that really do align with the science, rather than making changes that do not really address the scientific basis of quality. So that's one area to focus on. And then another is recommendations for alternative valuation methodologies or criteria. And here I think there's real opportunity for some creativity when in the process of negotiating the extension bills, there are many proposals put forward for either improving quality, bringing the credits under the cap, which they did, and replacing the offset program with a fund, which I believe is the best approach in order to stop wasting money. Right now, we're sending a lot of money into these projects that don't really reduce the emissions that they claim. Most of those projects are out of state. We don't have funds to lose. So we want to keep those funds in the state and we want to put them into priority projects. It's very hard to get the carbon accounting right. We're going to work towards that. But I propose considering alternative valuation methods and criteria that allow for us to create a fund where businesses can, instead of buying allowances or in addition to buying allowances, can put a certain percentage into a fund that goes to support emissions reductions in the state, like GGRF. And that's the first part of this before we get into a shorter 5-minute presentation on DEBs. But let me pass to the chairs.
And I think, just noting, I think CARB staff want to add some information also. Is this a good opportunity for that, putting it out to them?
Yeah, thanks, Jane. This is Dr. Catherine. I was going to briefly speak to that. Acknowledging that we have limited time today because we have a lot of different items on the agenda. There was a note from Regender with Industrial Strategies Division that CARB knows the program well. So I just want to be explicit again that we have invited ISD staff to present on cap and trade to the EJAC and been told that there was not capacity. We did not schedule time today or anticipate staff responses. We were not made aware that ISD staff would be in attendance. And my understanding is that we have a hard stop at 12:30 that we have to stop for, I think, maybe transcriptionists and other folks to be able to take a lunch break. And I know we have another speaker queued up that we're supposed to get to before lunch. So honoring all of that, I do want to make space from ISD to be able to respond and also acknowledge that we may not be able to get through it all today, and it may need to be a follow-up discussion where we have actually agendized that. And if staff from CARB could please take the messages from the chat and make sure that the public sees them, as is our common practice for Zoom.
Thank you.
So I'm sorry, Catherine, this is Regender, and I'm happy to put my messages in the chat for everyone. I also have links to information on our website that actually clear up some of the mischaracterizations in this presentation for the broader public that's been on our website for many, many years. Is now the time for me to respond, or do you want me to wait until after the 5-minute presentation that our guest speaker has?
I think if it's specific to what's already been covered, my request would be if you could keep it brief, and again, recognize if it needs to be a more in-depth discussion, it would be better for us to have it on a publicly noticed agenda and to accommodate the time for that, because we didn't plan for that today.
Okay, I appreciate that, and I do want to make sure that I respect your time. And I was under the impression that it had been shared that I would want to make sure we had a chance to reflect on this presentation. So I'm sorry if my misunderstanding was there. So first, I just want to also reflect that public service and advocacy to protect public health is more critical now than ever. And this work is hard, but it's important to have facts on our side as we do this work. You know, it's already been seen the federal attacks on climate science and rollback on public and environmental protections. And CARB, the state of California, is spending significant resources to defend against those attacks on our programs and policies. Along with that, CARB submitted a 30-page line-by-line rebuttal of the Department of Energy report that is being used to undermine climate science and roll back the endangerment finding on greenhouse gases. But I also want to reflect that to date, we have been reluctant to use that same critical lens publicly on the continuing attacks against our climate programs from non-federal parties, and that needs to change. We need some national governments now more than ever to step up and not have claims about our programs, when left unanswered, have a chilling effect on action elsewhere. So I'm not surprised by anything that was presented, because many of these claims were circulating even before we issued our first offset credits. All of this is knowable because it's on our public website. And as we have repeated so many times, our inventory for tracking progress towards our targets does not have any adjustments for offsets. So these claims that somehow offsets are being used to hide or some way manipulate the progress that we're making towards our statutory targets, that's just not real. And like specifically, I do have some questions on this presentation, and there's only 4 of them, and I'm going to just quickly lay them out. So the first is that the guest speaker has sent in letters to our public dockets raising concerns about our program for 14 years. And it's clear based on the conversation here that the better option would not be to have an offset program, but to have a carbon tax where you're paying into a fund and that money is used for other things. But those are not equivalent policy choices. And those are choices that the legislature would have to make. And we would, of course, implement anything that the legislature would direct us to do. So we also saw that there are reviews about other programs that were on the slide, in one of the slides here. So my first question is, has there ever been a program that meets the ideal theoretical standard that the guest speaker envisions being successfully implemented anywhere? So that's one of the questions. The second is that for years, our guest speaker has raised concerns around crediting and leakage around the forestry protocol, which resulted in a Senate inquiry letter to CalEPA and CARB in 2019. At the time, the CalEPA secretary and CARB chair responded via a response letter calling out the misinterpretation of our protocol and errors in the analysis by the guest speaker. In fact, another faculty professor also sent a letter identifying how their work was being misrepresented and misused in attacking our protocol. And we never saw that feedback and how it was integrated into the findings that were put out back in 2019. The other issue that I have is that we've litigated this program, and I know that the speaker here provided background support, not as a paid consultant, but background support as part of that process. The specifics of that lawsuit focused on additionality, which is how you set the baseline and how you ensure permanence. And I want to understand what has changed over the last decade in this program that would nullify the way that we defended against that lawsuit back in 2012, 13, 14. And then just like more of an observation, we should be more precise with our language. When we phrase that these reductions aren't real, that appears to be designed to conflate reductions versus credits. The slides are very clear. The issue isn't that these carbon stocks don't exist. The issue is that the speaker doesn't believe all of those carbon stocks shouldn't get an offset credit in the cap and trade program. And that distinction is really important. And so just on that piece, I just want to understand why a standard that is a theoretical that has been has been demonstrated by using data on our website is better than a standard that was set up through a multi-year public process that has been successfully litigated and has been publicly vetted. And I understand that our guest speaker doesn't like the way that we've designed the program, doesn't like the policy choices that have been made, but this is the program that was vetted through a full-on public process. And yes, there are always opportunities to get new information and to update and to reflect the science. Our public website shows that this protocol has been updated several times to incorporate new data, new science, and SB 840 allows us to do that again, which is something we have always been committed to across all the protocols. And towards the end, there was a discussion about verifiers in the program. The CARB program has verifiers with strict rotation requirements and conflict of interest requirements. There has never been any data or evidence that there is an issue in our verification program. And it's not just the offset program that has verification. We have that kind of a validation verification program across several parts and programs across the agency. And before any of these credits are issued, staff makes the final decision based on all the data and information, and our staff also does site visits. We don't leave all of that up to these consultants that are hired by the project developers. And we oversee the verifiers, which means we can take away their accreditation if we see issues and if we find problems when we do audits. And we have exercised that right, and we find that to be a good way to police the third-party verification program and to have oversight of the project and on-the-ground actions.
Rajender, it's been several minutes now, so can you clarify if you're almost done and if you've gotten through your 4 questions? Because this is explicitly what I was talking about, not getting into a long back and forth.
I'm happy to stop now. I mean, I just want to make sure that we're getting all the facts out, because leaving these things unanswered is just not the right way for any kind of public discussion to happen when it comes to public policy. So I'm going to stop here and respect what you asked for.
Thank you. And Kevin, I see your hand, but I think we're going to move on and allow the speaker to finish her presentation. Dr. Catherine, does that work?
Well, I mean, first, I think we do need to say a few things about what were said, because I don't think anybody has said that we don't have CARB's back on federal attacks on science. And I think throwing around words like facts and science is very dangerous, to act like CARB is the truth holder and knows everything about this program because they're the ones in charge of running it. And I don't appreciate personal attacks on speakers that we've brought that are very credible academics who put in a lot of work, who are coming to genuinely offer feedback to CARB about how programs can be improved. So I want to differentiate between federal attacks versus personal attacks versus constructive critiques and debates, which is what we're here to do at EJAC. CARB should be open on how to improve programs. And if you would like to be a part of that dialogue, our agenda is posted in advance, and you can always reach out and ask for time for staff to be able to present your version of the facts. But let's be honest, science is a debate. It's an iterative and ongoing process, and CARB is not the holder of the ultimate truth. So I want to be clear here. We're running behind on time, and I did not ask Dr. Hyatt to be prepared to respond to personal attacks from CARB staff. So I would like to defer to her if there is anything that she would like to say, and then move forward with the presentation. And if more debate is needed, that we agendize that for a future meeting where we have had time to prepare and have respectful dialogue in accordance with EJAC's meeting agreements.
Thank you. So we'll turn it back over to the presenter.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I wrote down your four or five questions. I know that we're limited in time, so let me just quickly provide some responses. So far, no major offset program has met a quality standard, has achieved quality. For the reasons that I presented, that's my understanding of why. You have individual protocols that have achieved quality. For example, some cook stove offset programs or protocols. And I think Isometric is a registry that really is focused on quality and seems to, and I haven't gone into depth into their protocols, but from what I understand, they're deeply engaging the scientists in the writing of the protocols, and they're conservative and prioritizing the science. So it's possible, but it hasn't been done at scale. On your last 2 points, you seem to be saying that because you've had a public process, it means that quality is achieved. Quality is a function of whether the resulting offset projects are reducing the claimed emissions reductions. And if you want to go back several slides, there's a rich and conclusive body of literature showing that there's some serious problems with the IFM protocol specifically, which is 71% of the program to date. And I would encourage CARB to take published research very seriously and to align its program with the science. It's concerning that you seem to be, where you are being asked by the legislature to align the program with the science. And at this moment, you seem to be attacking a scientist that's presenting a body of research. So I do find that concerning. And then just in terms of the verifiers, what I mentioned is that the problem is not in the verification, but it's in the mandate given to the verifiers, where the verifiers are asked to make sure that projects align with a set of rules that are not as science aligned. Yeah, there you go.
Thank you. Would you
Shall
like
we go on?
To your second presentation?
Sure, and I could go through that really quickly.
Go ahead.
Okay, so direct environmental benefits in the state. AB 398 in 2017, the previous extension bill, mandated that half of all offsets that are used by each individual entity user of the credits have to have DEBs, where direct environmental benefits in the state are defined in that law as reductions or avoidance of emissions of any air pollutant in the state, or the reduction of or avoidance of any pollutant that could have an adverse impact on waters of the state. Then in the ARB's regulation, they clarify that offset projects that are located within or that avoid greenhouse gas emissions within the state of California are automatically considered to provide direct environmental benefits in the state. And I want to highlight that second phrase, or that avoid greenhouse gas emissions within. So if you want to go to the next slide. So the second, so we've already seen the graph on the left side. On the right side, what we see are that total CARB offset credits that are used in this first commitment period after the start of the DEBS requirement, 2021 to 2023. The max offsets allowed is that first bar, so something like 34 million tons CO2 equivalent. Entities, regulated entities used offsets not equal to the maximum, but equal to 78% of the maximum. Of that, exactly 50% had DEBs, but only a third of those credits are from projects in the state. So what I want to discuss right now is that difference between the 33% and the 50%, those out-of-state projects that meet the DEBS requirement. So if you go to the next slide. Now, some of those credits are forest projects located in waterways of rivers flowing into the state. Most of them are ODS CFC destruction offsets from the destruction of refrigerants that all take place in Arkansas and Ohio. They're considered, CARB considers them to have DEBs because all projects, all of these refrigerant destruction projects have some refrigerants that are sourced from within the state, where they say if there's any refrigerant, no matter how small, any refrigerant that's sourced from within the state of California, the entire project is considered to have DEBs. We crunch the numbers, and on average, only 1 in 10 sources that are listed in these in the full set of projects, ODS projects that meet the DEBS requirement, 1 in 10 sources are from within California. Now, we don't know how big each source is, but if each source is basically around the same, 10% of credits are from refrigerants that are sourced from within California, even though all credits have the DEBS designation. So next slide. And yeah, here we are is just the summary of this bill. And you'll notice in the second purple bullet, SB 840 requires CARB to study, to perform an evaluation of the potential for changes to the definition of DEBs. So there's an opening for meeting the spirit of the requirement rather than the letter of the requirement. The last slide is just a few resources, and welcome questions and discussion.
Thank you. We'll open it up to the committee for discussion. Matt, I see your hand.
Yeah, I just hope that we can table the process discussion that obviously needs to come out of this, and sort of, and I don't want to fall into that trap myself by talking about how misaligned some of this conversation was. So I want to thank Barbara for your presentation. You know, I think one of the things that I learned by sitting through the 1757 carbon targets ritual over in the Natural Resources Agency was that these kinds of offsets, and even, you know, just even investments in the land sector, seems to be like including them in the scoping plan presumes that they can do something about fossil fuel consumption, right? And that at the core of the scoping plan, everything that we fold in still pales in comparison to the termination of the burning of fossil fuels. And I think, you know, you're absolutely correct that there's a lot about the timber industry that doesn't seem to be reflected in the way California calculates the carbon offsets from these forests. You know, we got folks that, I mean, I grew up in lumber country, right? They cut themselves out of a job and they told us all to wipe our ass with a spotted owl. But when those guys are out there in the forest, they're not calculating their emissions while they're harvesting. And when they create a durable product like oriented strand board or something, that's considered a carbon sink, even though they burn so many goddamn fossil fuels to generate it in the first place. That it points to the heart of the flaw of this cross of carbon that we continue to crucify ourselves on in this scoping plan. And it masks the significance and the importance of conserving our lands. Conserving forests and conserving agricultural lands have their own benefits, both in short-lived climate pollutants and the reduction of loss and risk and emergency response. And until the scoping plan finds a way to be flexible and to integrate meaningful outcomes and co-benefits for communities, putting a carbon target on every single thing in our state, and putting a carbon target on everything is to miss the forest for the carbon. Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you, Matt. Jill, I see your hand, and then Kevin Hamilton.
Thank you for that presentation. I found it very educational and beneficial. And speaking as a tribal person who has had our biologists be challenged left and right, I want to remind everyone the importance of peer review in scientific findings, that it is a quality control measure. So we should welcome our peers who are reviewing our data and our science so that we know that what we're looking at is the same thing and can be something called, you know, scientifically defensible data. And you can't do that in a vacuum. And tribes have had to work hard to ensure that all of our data is always peer reviewed. It's a necessity to ensure that the work that we're doing isn't skewed, and we need to remember that. Additionally, speaking as a tribe that has received the return of ancestral lands with one of these crazy carbon projects on it, that that's the very reason we can't get out from beneath it, is because it's being used in this skewed process of saying that somehow we're doing something good, when I am hard pressed to believe that anything good is coming out of it. So again, I just want to ask that as an agency, CARB understand that their data must absolutely be peer reviewed and peer challenged. And it's not always easy, but we have to be open to it in order for us to ensure the quality of our data is good. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Jill. Kevin Hamilton.
Yes. Sorry, I've got construction here today. Big leak in the wall. So you hear banging in the background. My bad. So I just want to thank the speaker again for coming forward today and presenting her peer-reviewed literature. There are ways to challenge peer-reviewed literature. The literature CARB is referring to is old. This literature is much newer at this point. And echoing our partners, my partners here on EJAC, in our concern that EJAC once again, in my mind, was somewhat disrespected here. This was on the agenda ahead of time. ISD was invited to present. They chose not to, stating lack of capacity. Somehow I think someone from ISD could have come over here for 15 or 20 minutes and done a presentation, especially since they seem so well versed in our speakers' literature. It shouldn't have been that difficult. Instead, I feel like we got a heavy hitter out of the executive office to come over and who has a long record of working with the EJAC over time. That seems to have worked out for her, and presented their points and the science that backs them up. The idea that everything is on websites and that everyone should just go to look at them and it will be clear is ridiculous as well. It's great to have somebody like this come out and give us the nuts and bolts. The same kind of issue arose during the CI conversation when we found out, not surprisingly, that even though the independent researchers from esteemed universities that CARB regularly contracts with disagreed with how they interpret data that was presented to them, they're still going to do what their internal team says they're going to do, even if it conflicts with that. And I feel like this is a similar issue, but don't have enough data to be able to support that statement. So again, I'm sorry on behalf of EJAC for the way that attack happened in our meeting. And by the way, it felt like an attack to me. The tone in which it was delivered was confrontational. And again, I'm sorry that happened, but it was a great presentation. I understand this better than I did before, and the shell game that it actually is, but it's the one we have to live with. So now we need to be part of the process that works with CARB's team so that we're in the loop here at EJAC on how they're applying the latest science to this very, very difficult subject and area. So thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. And Dr. Catherine, I see your hand, and then I think we'll move after that to the next agenda item, just appreciating that we did schedule another guest speaker, so trying to hit their timeline also. Dr. Catherine?
Absolutely. Thank you, Jane. Just wanted to close out this item as the Carbon Markets Work Group Chair and as co-chair. Thank my colleagues and ditto to all of your thoughtful comments, and appreciate you all allowing us to run over. I, too, am disappointed by the way that this went and wish we had more time for substantive dialogue and questions, but want to express my gratitude and appreciation to Dr. Barbara Haya for you coming and presenting and for your thoughtful responses. And there's certainly much more to discuss in a future meeting because we do have other guest speakers.
And feel free to get in touch if you have any follow-up questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I do note that we do have some members of the public who have their hands raised at this point. We will be taking public comment in the order that it has been agendized for today. So at this point, we will move on to agenda item number 5, EJAC discussion on the landfill methane. I'll turn it over to the co-chairs to kick us off.
Oh, I guess that's a cue for me. I'm sorry, let me get back to my agenda real quick. So we have, I believe, a couple speakers, one speaker, and I will, unless Tom wants to say anything as a preface to the landfill methane rule, I will open it up. I will open it up to our speaker, which I believe is Nick Lapis.
Hey folks, and good morning, afternoon, whatever it is. Good noon. I'm not sure. Can you guys hear me and see me?
Yes. Loud and clear.
No one warned me I'd be going after all those fireworks.
Just another day.
Thank you all for having me. I know many of you for many years, and I have a tremendous respect for you and the work that EJAC has done. Actually, I think I was at the first EJAC hearing back in 2007, 2008-ish, making a public comment, and I feel like I hope I'm not at the last EJAC meeting. Hopefully there'll be a lot more. I have a presentation. Am I able to share my screen? I put in a request. Can I share my screen? I just run it myself.
I think technically we have to run it on our end, but is it okay if you just direct them to advance the slides?
Yeah, I updated one of the updated one of the slides. Not a huge deal if I could just run with it. Okay.
Thank you. Great.
So again, Nick Lapis with Californians Against Waste. Next slide. For anybody who doesn't know us, we're an environmental organization based in Sacramento, work on recycling issues, been around since the late 70s, worked with a lot of you in different capacities over the years. So I think I know a lot of you at least. Next slide. Next slide. Oh, there you go. I'm here to talk about the landfill methane regulations that CARB has put out for draft comment. They are going to the board. They're supposed to go to the board November 20th. They're in the public comment period right now. These are actually updates to the regulations that were adopted in 2010. Just a quick recap of those regulations. They were adopted as an AB 32 early action measure. I actually think that might have been what I was talking about or testifying at EJAC at the first hearing, was the first time this was proposed. And at the time when this was proposed, again, this was one of the first 3 early action measures under AB 32, and it was supposed to be the lowest hanging fruit for landfill reductions. So not making any kind of systemic changes, but kind of going after the best practices from the various air districts that they've already implemented and making them into a statewide rule. A lot of it was making changes at the margins. And at the time, there was a lot of talk of that being phase 1. And the staff report and other documents at the time talked about a phase 2 and a phase 3 of the regulations. And there really wasn't a phase 2 or a phase 3 up until this point. So next slide. A lot has changed since 2010. I mean, even at the time, we thought there was a lot more that could be done on landfill regulations. But since then, the world has drastically changed, right? Like at this point, we can see methane leaks from landfills from space. It went from something that was purely hypothetical to something that we now have a million different ways to find and to fix. We also have a much better sense of the community impacts, the health impacts. There's more and more research coming out about the impacts of landfills beyond climate, things like PFAS and in both the water contamination and air quality, benzene, all sorts of other things as well. And we've also had some catastrophic failures that we'd like to learn from, like the Chiquita Canyon landfill in Los Angeles. Next slide. Next slide. So there's some good stuff in the regulations, and just I like to say, staff really did put in a ton of work, and they've been having workshops for 2 years, or maybe even 3 years at this point, with a lot of input from the public, from community members. It's a very thoughtful document, and there's some really good stuff in there. Just to highlight a few things that we really like, there's now an official remote sensing response program. We've had satellites that can see these plumes coming out of landfills, and there wasn't an official way for that to be incorporated into the rulemaking process. So even though they could see a plume, it was then basically that information would go to CARB. CARB staff would then notify the landfill operator, and the landfill operator would then go and address the leak. But they had no real requirement to do that. So that's now an official program as part of the regulations. better data collection and reporting requirements. The scope of the exemptions was reduced. My updated slide had a picture from a report that came out of Oregon a few months ago. I'm sorry I don't have it. Basically, the existing regulations had really big exemptions. So the entire working face of the landfill and the entire all the steep slopes of the landfill were completely exempt. And there was an analysis that Beyond Toxics in Oregon put out of the various exemptions from actual landfills, and they ranged from anywhere from the 20% range to 69% of the landfill was completely exempt. And this proposed change reduces the scope of those exemptions. It still leaves an exemption for the early working face, which is one of the biggest sources of emissions, but it is a big improvement in that regard. Next slide. This is very technical and wonky, and so I just kind of wanted to focus on a few high-level missed opportunities. There's a lot of other stuff we could talk about as well. I think overall our feeling on the regulation is that, man, we wish we had gone further. Like, this is all good stuff. All these are improvements, but so much of this is a missed opportunity. Notably on the technological front, we can do a lot better than the current monitoring process that we have for landfills. Basically, the current process, and this was another photo I added, but too late. The current process relies on somebody walking with a handheld methane detector, and they walk on a 25-foot spacing serpentine pattern through the landfill, or through the closed part of the landfill, and they do it once a quarter. And the methane detectors are pretty sensitive, and they work on a range of 2 to 5 inches off the ground. So there's a lot of room for operator error. There's a lot of time gaps between monitoring, and the 25-foot spacing inherently misses a lot of the landfill. There is much more advanced technology that can basically replicate what the human inspectors were doing using drones or stationary monitors. And using that technology, you no longer have the physical limitations of what people can do, and you can actually cover the entire landfill in a day or two. And you don't have to do a 25-foot spacing. You could do a 5-foot spacing if you wanted to. Because again, it comes down to a drone instead of a person doing the same work. What the regulations propose is allowing landfill operators to use these advanced technologies as an alternative compliance mechanism. The problem with that is that it uses the new technologies, but it doesn't actually change the requirements. So you're using those advanced technologies to do quarterly inspections on a 25-foot spacing. So really, you're not getting any of the benefits of the technology. Our request all along, and some of the folks on the line as well, has been to require the use of these drones and stationary monitors and rovers and these other advanced technologies, and not just to require them to be used to do the same thing, but to increase the frequency of the monitoring, reduce the grid spacing, and really use the technologies to their fullest. Next slide. Sorry, next slide. Okay. Missed opportunity number 2 is around data transparency and community protections. One thing that's come up with several fence line communities that live near landfills is really sort of a lack of trust with the landfill operators and the regulators to tell them when there is a problem. And the best that we can do right now is really do Public Records Act requests on the data that take a long time to get, and there's a big time gap between when you get it and when you actually see the information. So in meeting a lot with folks all over the state, there are kind of a couple different suggestions we had that were not incorporated into the reg. One was requiring fence line monitoring, similar to what we do with refineries. There's really no reason why we can't have the same type of dashboard that a refinery has to host that shows real-time data on benzene levels and all these other indicators that would be incredibly useful for a community member to know, like, oh, I woke up with a nosebleed. Is there something going on at the landfill? And you can pull up the dashboard and check, as opposed to waiting for either the landfill operator to notify you or the air district, which might never happen. The other thing that we like to see is much greater reporting of the data that is being collected. A lot of it is sort of goes into the bureaucracy and then is really, really hard for the public to access. So we'd like to see a public dashboard that hosts all the existing data that is being collected, namely the methane readings, the temperature readings, the pressure readings, the gas composition between methane and CO2, et cetera. Next slide. The regulation does something interesting. If you look through it, you can see there's a bunch of new stuff, what appears to be new stuff on temperature. And that's something we definitely wanted to see. We wanted CARB and the air districts to play a more active role in regulating temperatures and preventing some of the fires we've seen. The problem is that the requirements in the regulation seem to be largely copied from the federal requirements that already exist. Specifically, when it comes to the temperature thresholds, they're the same that are in the federal requirements. And clearly, those have not been sufficient to prevent the impacts we've seen. And part of the problem is that you're looking at the temperature at the surface. And you're looking at the temperature at the surface, and if it's above 131 degrees for 60 days, then that triggers a bunch of things to happen. But the temperature below ground could be anywhere from 25 to 125 degrees greater than the surface temperature. And we are finding the elevated temperature events way too late to actually be able to stop them from spreading. So we would suggest a much lower threshold, if not for mitigation, at least a much lower threshold for beginning the downwell monitoring, when you put a thermometer down the well and you're actually trying to figure out what the temperature is below the surface. And that should happen, when you're seeing temperatures around 110 on the surface, that's when you should probably start monitoring down below to make sure you don't have a runaway chemical reaction. Next slide. The last thing I'll flag is that the methane concentration limits are too high. The proposal keeps the same methane limits that the EPA has had for decades. They weren't changed in the last reg. They weren't changed here. Basically, when you're walking around with that handheld sniffer and you're looking for leaks, it's only an issue in the regs if it goes above 500 parts per million. Staff proposed reducing that to 200 parts per million back when the early action measure was being discussed in 2007 to 2010. At the time, the landfill operators pushed back really hard on that. And the compromise that CARB reached in the final regulation was, well, we'll keep the standard of 500, but we will require reporting of all exceedances above 200 as a way to gauge, like, hey, how far are we from, is the entire landfill at 486, or do we never get above 200? And based on that data, staff had actually proposed reducing the number to 200 again. Every workshop that they had up until the regs came out, this was one of the things that was listed as kind of low-hanging fruit for improving the landfill gas capture. The final regulations did not make that change from 500 to 200. I'm not going to speak to motivation or anything like that, but it seems like a very easy thing to do. And I'll just flag, this isn't like you hit 200 or 500 for that matter, and you get a violation, you get a ticket. All that it does is that it triggers additional monitoring. And again, I think that the issue with the landfills, whether it's the methane leaks or the fires or a lot of the other issues we have, come down to catching problems early and fixing them early. And a lower threshold would definitely help to do that. I think the next slide is just my contact info, but you can, yeah, there you go. And a way outdated photo of my son, who's now a kindergartner.
Thank you. And so noting for the record right now for time, it's about 12:16. We do have a hard stop of 12:30, just some required breaks. So why don't we open it up to discussion from the committee?
Yeah, I can make a comment if there's no hands up.
Go ahead, Tom, and then we'll get Kevin Hamilton. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I just wanted to mention as a reminder to those about the relationship between landfills and environmental justice. In the 80s, the California Integrated Waste Management Board commissioned a study, and which became a report called the Sorrell Report by Sorrell and Associates, which basically recommended certain communities for trying to site landfills and waste incinerators. And then after that, we, if within a few years of that report, which mentions rural, low income, low education, even Catholic communities, where ranching and farming is one of the main sources of income, basically to me describing rural Latino communities and farm worker communities like we have in the San Joaquin Valley. And within a few years of that report, several facilities were planned, like the waste incinerator in West Stanislaus County, which is surrounded by 80% Latino community. You have the Kettleman City, Kettleman Hills hazardous waste dump, also in a majority Latino community. And then we know nationwide, 80% of these types of facilities are in disadvantaged communities and environmental justice communities. That's why this is an important issue to environmental justice. It's probably, not a surprise that there's been some feet dragging on these regulations. It hasn't been looked at in a decade and a half. And it was unfortunate that our November meeting got canceled so that we could have had a little more time to build recommendations before the CAR board meeting that they get to have in November. So I know that we're working on a resolution. Hopefully we get to present that eventually. But another reason why the EJAC is important to have to remind CARB and the public about these historical burdens and historical inequities that are still being perpetrated, by, putting off making stronger regulations. And there are communities right now, as was mentioned in the presentation, landfill communities that are feeling the ongoing burdens of this, even some in the San Joaquin Valley, like in the community of Avenal. So I hope this is taken seriously, and I hope we can have some more time to give input. I know that there is a coalition that's been doing some advocacy around the landfill methane rules, and just wanted to give that context, and thank you, Nick, for making yourself available today to do the presentation. I'll leave it at that for now.
Thanks, Tom. Luis, and then Matt. Luis, I saw you had your hand raised. There you go.
I had my hand raised. You said I would be next. But
I'm sorry,
whatever.
Kevin.
I can
I'm sorry,
hold.
Kevin. Go ahead. Keep your
I
hand
mean,
up.
there's no hurry.
Yeah, just keep it up.
I had it up. I took it down when you said it, and we'll go to Kevin.
Thank you. Sorry
I
about
just
that.
had a quick question. So, you had mentioned the idea of using drones to replace the 25 foot walk of death there. And I just wondered what you saw as far as the relevance of satellite measurement, which can definitely has high resolution and can measure ground and underground temperatures to a certain extent, depending on which satellites we're talking about, but and their technology package. So is there some reason we wouldn't be moving as we are in the air pollution side uh, to using satellites to gather this kind of information?
Yeah, I think it's a yes, and that was one of our recommendations as well. That was also not really included. Um, in other sectors, we require facility operators to purchase satellite data on commercially available satellite data on emissions. We could be doing that here as well. The satellites are really good at finding like fluxes. So the big plumes that are coming out, they're really good at detecting that. What they're not good at is sort of the baseline emissions. When there are emissions from everywhere, they don't really stand out as much. And the two are really complementary, but 100% we should be doing that. We do have the carbon mapper data too that the state is paying
Right.
for. Yeah, that they incorporate into here in terms of responding to plumes that come up through Carbon Mapper. We did suggest that landfill operators should be required to buy the methane data from commercial operators, satellite operators. That was not included either. But yeah, 100%. We should have that as well.
It did great work for us down in Kern there with the leaks a few years ago. So it was incredibly valuable at that point.
Yeah. And then
they were
you
just
mentioned
getting the program off the ground at that point. But wow.
And that was an example that was given to us too. That's how I first heard about it. So I think that's a great suggestion. You mentioned the temperature stuff. We do also have even federal satellites that are looking at ground temperature. It's not always this. I mean, ground temperature is not the same as the landfill temperature, but it can be an indicator that there could be a bigger problem. It's not always. I don't think we could issue fines based on the satellite read of the temperatures. But again, the whole point is to go out and start monitoring earlier. So you could have the satellite temperature readings be a trigger for the downwell temperature monitoring.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good presentation, Nick. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I do note that we did also include CARB staff on this item. And so we do have Matt Harrison from ISD with us. He had a few slides, but in the interest of time, he's also available for questions or discussion on this item. But I've got Luis, Matt, and then Mayor Ray Leon.
Thank you. I suffer from the same technological issues that I've been hearing throughout this meeting. So apologize for that. And I didn't catch the entire presentation, but one thing that I did catch my attention around the monitoring or on the data is that one thing that I've seen for decades now, and I'd be interested to know, and I guess this could apply to anyone collecting data, is that there's still a lot of voluntary expectations from generators of air pollution or waste generators. A lot of this is still left to the actual generator to, in their good faith voluntary reporting. I also don't no longer see the home of the CARB toxics data. I don't know what happened to it. I just imagine it suffered the same fate as federal data that used to once live in websites and no longer there anymore. But I'm just wondering if you had any thoughts about both those, especially the fact that there is data that the actual generator is entrusted to populate, and that they are being, I guess, honest about it. And if you have any thoughts about that.
I don't have specific thoughts. I mean, that's always an issue. And it is hard to trust an operator, and they're better actors than others in the industry.
And does CARB have an inventory of how much data it collects at the goodwill of the generator?
That might be a question for Matt if he's on.
Yeah, this is Matt Harrison at ISD. We have a list of all of the data that is required to be collected under the regulation. But again, that is all required data. It's not voluntary.
Right. So again, required data that is vetted utilizing calibrated instruments or institutionalized processes is different than, for example, I may be required, at some point to report how many times I went over the speed limit. Right? And they leave it up to me and my, honest reporting. So is there a place or a home where I can find how many generators or permit holders and how many databases are being trusted to the actual generator and their goodwill, good faith, and honest reporting?
No, we don't have anything like that under the landfill methane regulation, because again, that's all regulatory required data.
Okay. Again, just to be clear, when you say regulatory required, does that mean that a governmental agency with calibrated instruments and methods are all being applied?
No, the operators report the data and the regulators review the data.
Okay, so then it goes back to what I initially put as a question: if there is a database that informs the public, or even advisories like the EJAC, which ones are voluntarily reporting, and in which CARB analyzes secondary, trusting that data is. So let me reframe a question. There are one or more instances which CARB just takes the word of the generator.
So under the landfill methane regulation, the operators have to report the data using calibrated instruments, and then through CARB's enforcement efforts, that staff can do site visits and do their own measurements as needed. But yes, for the data that is reported under the regulation, that's reported and evaluated by CARB staff. And one of the things that we're hoping to do under this regulation is to make that data more uniform and publicly accessible.
So then CARB is calibrating the instruments that the generator is using?
No, CARB is calibrating the instruments for the site visits done under its enforcement program.
So only when there's enforcement, not when there's just data collection.
Right. The operators report data under the reg using their calibrated instruments. That's correct.
So there are scenarios in which there may be data that would be found to not be accurate based on the voluntary reporting versus a more hands-on governmental instruments being deployed in the hands of governmental instruments?
I don't know that there's a yes or no answer to that question, because it's fairly nuanced, because there can be there's a temporality in the emissions. So an operator may or may not find something that may or may not be confirmed with a follow-up enforcement inspection.
I'll say that we had a landfill inspector from an agency I will not name reach out to us anonymously, not anonymously, but privately, and say that they go out and they verify and they find readings that are drastically different than what the operators are finding. So it 100% happens. And again, without even attributing any malice or anything like that, it's just there's a lot of operator error that goes into walking miles per day trying to hold a device exactly 2 to 5 inches off the ground. And in fact, when I was looking for photos of the device, including to the program, I think most of them were being held at the wrong height in the photos. It's just really hard to do. Again, even not assuming that somebody's trying to hide the ball, it's really hard to do consistently.
Yeah, the last thing I'll say as a recommendation is it's really important to provide access to these databases because environmental justice communities or the public in general can always refer to these data sources and they can ground truth it to be able to identify burdens that they are facing. But if we don't have access to that public facing data, like the air toxics, I used to be able to go in there and see it. I can't find it anymore. And then the database that I found has no more data in it or has very little data. So I don't think that's ever been explained as to why that happened or whether there was a public process to make that change. Thank you.
Thank you. And so noting for folks right now, the time is 12:32, and we did have a hard stop at 12:30 as a requirement for some of our partners that support the meeting today. We've got just a little bit of wiggle room there, and so I think we're going to try and push through discussion and get to public comment, but we want to keep it tight here just on that requirement with our providers. Thank you. Matt?
Well, I'll try to make it fast. Thanks, Nick. This was a great presentation. I think you made a clear case for adopting the most stringent rules possible. I think as it fits in here for the AB 32 EJAC, this is an opportunity to regulate a short-lived climate pollutant that's really devastating our climate scenarios. And as Tom accurately pointed out, disproportionately impacts second-class California that chokes on everybody else's trash. To Luis's last point, the data transparency is paramount in this. I use the MODIS satellite the Forest Service created to identify forest floor temperatures, to identify a landfill in Manteca that's overheating. And I submitted a Public Records Act request to the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District. And I asked for the regulated gases and I asked for the regulated temperature, but they don't call that record a temperature record. So they told me they have no records relating to that facility and relating to that permit that say carbon monoxide and say temperature. So they absolutely were playing the hide the ball at that regulator. I have no problem saying that with them. I don't think there's any bridges left there to be burnt. I think there's a component to this that's peculiar. Like we have sort of a gas capture reality where we're either flaring it off or we're trying to reuse those organic gases as a recycled fuel. But that can cause an increase in subsurface temperatures that's now aerosolizing things that don't incinerate at the same temperature as methane. So we are aerosolizing persistent fluoroalkaloids and pesticides that have been archived in these landfills. And it would be really a shame if the state's air quality regulator was reintroducing human health risks and pollutants into second-class California communities. Those co-pollutants are serious, and that's all the more reason for us to have the most rigorous monitoring and community alert systems possible. It's like easier to monitor this place better than it is to monitor it the dumb old way that's really hard and doesn't work. CARB really has to wrestle with this. You're going to have a satellite telling you where methane's dropping on a community, and with scientific certainty that methane is infiltrating that community with co-pollutants that are human health risks. And so how is CARB going to sit on that data and withhold it? How are you going to have data about exposure in real time and you're not going to tell communities? That stuff needs to be dashboarded right away. I think a lot of it could be dashboarded at the owner-operator's expense, but as we've seen, bad actors are as common as they come in the trash business. And so, I would be curious to hear, maybe when there's more time, from Matt, is if there's a way to sort of phase in increased rigor in regulatory activity or increased monitoring in this current rulemaking, right? Like maybe we don't need to have everybody with a permanent fence line dashboard and a community alert system, but there's a handful of these landfills that absolutely do deserve that. And it would be a shame if the executive office's hands are tied waiting on yet another board meeting to increase the rigor of this draft rule. I got a bunch more that I can say about this, but turns out trash is super important stuff, and I've been excited learning about it. And it's a shame how long it's been left unregulated. And since we went through a 15-year period of I don't know, I think it's too bad we don't have a meeting next month where we could actually inform this board and make sure they make an informed choice.
Thank you, Matt. Seeing no more hands, I think that concludes discussion on this item. In the interest of having public comment before the break, we are going to push through on this so that our guest speakers can still be here for the public comment period. So we will move to public comment.
Can I just add one reminder really quickly? We are in a 45-day period that closes November 10th, so I do hope that everyone will submit public comments, and there is that opportunity to help inform us before the board meeting. So thank you.
Thank you. Sorry about that. All right, we'll move to public comment. John Constantino, I see your hand raised. Please go ahead. John, you should be unmuted on our end. You might need to unmute on yours. Go ahead.
There we go. Yeah, no, we go. I got it. It just popped up. Sorry. Can you hear me?
We can. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, great. So John Costantino on behalf of the Verified Emission Reduction Association. We represent the developers of both DEBs and non-DEBs offsets. So going back to the offset item, first of all, I'd like to say that we have put in a request several times to speak at an EJAC meeting and have not been accepted. There was a comment that the EJAC doesn't want to present industry testimony, but we would be happy to present and have this detailed debate that was talked about earlier. There's a lot of work to do in offsets. The AB 1207 and SB 840 set up work for ARB. We look forward to supporting their work. Vera supports updating the protocols and the use of the best science. But I want to take a step back and talk about what we heard today. I just want to be clear, this program, the compliance offset program, is not CDM, it's not voluntary offsets, and to conflate the programs is incorrect. And why are offsets in the program in the first place? Cost containment, additional private finance, exportable policy, multimedia benefits, local benefits, water quality, innovation, additional reductions that the state can't achieve through cap and trade. So those are some of the big ticket items that we don't want to lose sight of why we're doing this in the first place. We can haggle over the details for hours, but let's not forget there's a reason offsets are in place. I have two examples of why offsets innovation has really been well received. The Alaska Native corporations, they gave up their copper mining rights so that they could focus their revenue on timber. Instead of on timber, they have the offset revenue. So there's a benefit to offsets that goes far beyond protecting the trees. That's one example. Another example had to do with ODS refrigerants that were collected that would have been sitting on shelves in garages. People figured out a way to collect it. So there's innovation happening. I want to mention that the alternative to an offset, which is a reduction, is an allowance. So this is not a choice between an offset and a reduction, but an offset and an emission. There's lots to talk about. Comparing to Oregon and Washington it's just not apples and oranges. And so happy to present or have my members present to Vera members present to EJAC whenever the opportunity presents itself. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Teresa, I see your hand raised. Go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
Hi, my name is Teresa Lang, and I'm representing A New Climate. We're a global leader of diverse climate solutions. Thank you for the opportunity to provide comment today. I'm also providing comment in response to the presentation on cap and trade. And I want to note that I am also one of the Vera members that John referred to and fully agree with all of the comments John just made. Anu is a project developer of high quality carbon offsets for the cap and trade program, as well as for other compliance programs and voluntary buyers around the world. And we have participated in the program since its inception, generating over 25 million tons of emission reductions from California's forestry protocol. But I do want to highlight that in addition to those 25 million tons of emission reductions, these projects provide extensive social and environmental co-benefits to both the state and local communities in the form of watershed protection, improved air quality, ecological benefits such as habitat and corridor protection of migratory and endangered species, and forestry-focused employment opportunities. So the benefits go far beyond just emission reductions. We are strong supporters of the Cap and Invest program, and particularly the high-quality carbon offsets program. And I just want to underscore that by including offsets in the Cap and Invest program, California has created meaningful, immediate, real, additional, and verified climate benefits while also balancing energy costs to the state. The inclusion of offsets in the program has enabled savings of over $500 million, that's billion with a B, for California citizens by reducing the compliance costs of regulated entities. As we heard just over a month ago, the legislature and governor passed two pieces of important legislation, AB 1270 and SB 840. And not only did they extend the program, but they will also make a number of changes to the Cap and Invest program. And we look forward to the updates to protocols that CARB will be working on beginning, I believe, later this year, because we do believe that while we have very strong protocols already to date, that they can continue to be improved upon as we incorporate the latest and evolving science in this space. I do want to speak to 2 points that Professor Haya raised. For DEBs, I want to underscore that California receives considerable direct environmental benefits from forestry projects, both within and outside of the state, in the form of watershed protection and air quality, which are benefits that are not limited by state borders. So it is untrue that the state is not actually getting benefits there for out-of-state projects. I also want to underscore what the representative from CARB, Rajinder Sahota, mentioned about the leakage numbers cited by Professor Haya's 2019 paper. She misinterpreted a 2004 study. The original author of that cited study, Brian Murray, wrote a letter to this effect to the state legislature and I believe to Professor Haya in 2019, saying that his study was not applicable to the current leakage debate and that it had been misinterpreted. But unfortunately today, this research is still being improperly leveraged here. And so I think it's important to note. And we believe that updating leakage rates should be considered, but it's important to actually bring in the leading leakage researchers, such as Adam Daniel out of the University of Maine, to update such.
I'll need to interrupt you now. We're at time. Thank you. Thank you so much. Michael Coates, I see your hand raised. Go ahead. Michael, you should be unmuted on our end. You might need to unmute on yours. Michael, we can't hear you if you were talking. We'll come back to you. I'm going to move to another Michael Scarvla. Michael, we'll unmute you. You might need to unmute on your end.
Can you guys hear me?
We can, thank you.
Yeah. So my name is Mikhail Skavarla. I'm the Executive Director of the California Forest Carbon Coalition, specifically focused on forestry offsets in the state of California. Our members represent are constituted by tribes, nonprofits, and private landowners who've set aside substantial acreage in the North State to develop offset projects, avoiding typical timber harvest and other things in lieu of generating these carbon credits and while providing sustainability for their communities and the needs of those forests, while also increasing biodiversity and a number of other ecological benefits that are unaccounted for in today's critiques of forestry offsets. I think it should be noted a lot of what was said is that offsets are not real. That being said, the California courts have already upheld the current offset protocols as being real, additional, quantifiable, verifiable, and enforceable reductions. The scientific critiques you've heard today rely on alternative accounting methodologies, not evidence that the state's verified projects are failing to meet the laws or the regulations. These projects are delivering real, measurable climate and ecological benefits today, hundreds of thousands of acres under long-term conservation easements, improved habitat for endangered species, as well as wildfire resiliency projects to protect our forests, are being managed by tribes and rural landowners. These are public benefits that we can see and we can verify on the ground. CARB's program also includes a 100-year permanence requirement, a pooled insurance buffer pool, and as well as requirements with regards to pest loss and independent third-party verification, which is hand measurement, not satellite. And through SB 840 passed this year, we will update these protocols on a regular basis with the best available science. This is something that CFCC supports. Offsets do not weaken the cap. They make compliance affordable and preserve natural resources for deep decarbonization throughout the economy. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Michael Coates, we'll try again. We will unmute you on our end. You might need to unmute on yours. All right, Michael, we're not hearing you on this end. I'll move to Richard Groh. Richard, you are unmuted.
The unmute button just showed up. My name is Richard Groh. A number of you know me. I retired from EPA 6 years ago after spending 40 years in the air program as well as environmental justice program at EPA's Region 9 office. I came through all of the development, implementation, and oversight of all of EPA's air trading policies from 1976 on. And in 2001 or 2, I got to participate in what was an audit. We called it an evaluation at the time of the South Coast Reclaim Program. At the time, the most rigorous cap and trade program in the country, and certainly more rigorous than the program y'all are talking about here. I found nothing in today's presentation surprising. It actually was a welcome presentation, I thought. Part of what we found looking at the Reclaim Program, and it took a while to get there, there was some resistance to our looking at the program, was that basically compared to the baseline of source-specific reductions, which the Reclaim Program replaced, the actual reductions achieved were about a third of what was claimed. This goes hand in hand with the South Coast repeated claims at the time that there are tremendous cost savings, I think is the expression I keep hearing, by taking this approach. And basically what we found, there were in fact cost savings. In fact, they saved about a half to 2/3 of the money it would have cost to do cap and control. The reality was, though, that the cost actually corresponded exactly to the reductions gotten, meaning what was foregone were emission reductions, which actually amounted to saving money. The bottom line is, we found you get what you pay for, and the cost savings were illusory. What we were looking for, the basic requirements always are that they're real, the reductions are real, enforceable, and surplus and additional. And I'm hearing the commenters here saying, yeah, we know how to do that. But basically my experience, all of those years' experience, was without solid protocols, without real policing, none of which has been described today, you cannot trust this. You cannot believe it. The reality is why there's not, and at South Coast at that time, adequate oversight and enforcement is, frankly, it would cost too much to verify. If you look at these reductions being talked about today, forests in West Virginia, and there, no, you can't pay to do it. It would cost too much to actually have a district or an agency do that. So bottom line is, thank you for the presentation today. I have to say, I'm not surprised y'all have been, it sounds like you're being terminated shortly. Please, congratulations on keeping up the good fight, and one way or another, please keep on. Thank you. Excellent work, EJAC.
Thank you. All right, seeing no more hands raised and no one in the room at the podium, that concludes public comment on this item and takes us to our break. The time is now 12:50. Appreciation to our support staff and our partners and providers for extending us a little bit of grace on time, but we will still take the full 30 minutes and return at 1:20. I'll just confirm that with CARB staff now. Will we return at 1:20?
Yes, that works.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you all.
All right. Have a good lunch. Bon appetit.
And of course, committee members. All right, we'll see you at 1:20, and of course, you can go off camera. All right, the time is now 1:20. We'll get started in just a moment. All right, to move on to the afternoon portion of our agenda now. The time is 1:21, so we will resume the meeting. Noting we do still have a number of items to get through, so make sure we're still at quorum. I will do a quick roll call, so just please state your presence if you're here. Martha Dina Arguello.
Present.
I apologize. I may not have been able to hear that. Martha Dina Arguello.
Present.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Juan Flores. Dr. Catherine Grupa. Kevin Hamilton.
Here.
Thank you. John Harrell Jr. Thomas Helm. Tom, I see you on the meeting. We'll give you just a moment. Matt Holmes.
Present.
Thank you, Matt. John Kevin Jefferson III.
Present.
Thank you. Ray Leon. Luis Almeida. Jill Sherman Warren. Okay, we're going to pause just for a moment. I know we're trying to get everybody back at 1:20. That was quick. That went by fast. So let's give our EJAC members just another moment to join us. I see we do still have folks signed on to Zoom, so maybe just not back at their computer yet. So we'll give them just a moment. All right, thank you. Noting for the record that Juan Flores is with us. Thank you, Juan.
Sorry, I'm here. This is Jill.
Good. Thank you, Jill. All right, we are at quorum. We will continue with our agenda and move on to the EJAC discussion on the natural and working lands recommendations. I'll turn it over to the co-chairs to get us started.
Thank you. And I am going to hand it over to Matt to take us through the natural and working lands and then section.
Yeah, thanks. I think just a quick introduction is necessary. We've talked about this quite a bit, and we can take solace in the fact that there's been a long and robust design process for this resolution that came out of the Natural Resources Agency AB 1757 Expert Advisory Committee's carbon targets formulation. California took the time, and we thank the legislature for this, to create really robust carbon targets for the land use, the land type or land use types in our natural and working land scenario. We heard a great presentation from CARB where they really concurred and found a way to integrate a lot of this into future scoping planning rituals. Our resolution here is that everybody should have had a chance to see, is really underscoring the benefits of investing in people and places, and trying to find a way to underscore the co-benefits of conserving California, our lands, our forests, our farms, our waterways, and our coastlines and our wetlands. These are heavyweights in our lives, in our quality of life. And so the whereases that are now up on the screen in front of you should speak for themselves, but I think they also speak to the priorities that we set here at the Environmental Justice Advisory Committee, where we speak on behalf of folks that don't have lobbyists, right? And that's why we speak here, and that's why we may be selective as to who the experts are that come into this arena, because lobbyists have their own arena, right? It's every day across the street from my street. And so if folks want to take a second to look at this, and if they want to ask any specific questions about any of the points in there, I'd be happy to try to answer those. But I think the important point is that the directives below really encourage the state to prioritize this work. This is work that runs out of time. There's a clock on it. Investing in natural and working lands is something that has diminishing returns the longer we wait. As heat increases, moisture in soils, moisture in forests, clean water flows in the Delta, those all diminish, and our ability to sequester carbon with our non-human counterparts is reduced dramatically. And unfortunately, we kind of still have we spend a lot of time focusing on engineered removal solutions that may or may not be necessary, but certainly are less proven than anything we're calling for here. And so this resolution is asking for the Air Resources Board and ultimately for the Governor's Office and the Natural Resources Agency to be empowered to invest in nature-based solutions first and foremost. And we'll probably have to get around to the legislature to make that a reality in the future. But it should be pretty uncontroversial for the Environmental Justice Advisory Committee to get behind these recommendations. And yeah, I mean, I could go on and on about it, but if anybody has any questions, take some time, chew on it. Otherwise, I would ask for a motion to approve upon discussion.
Hey, Matt, this is Ashley from CARB. Just a quick suggestion. Can you talk a little bit about how this resolution is the same as the one that was discussed in the August meeting, just for the sake of the public?
Yeah, you bet. We presented this in draft form in August. And I think we may have added the directive at the bottom. I wasn't specific enough back in August about what we were asking CARB to do in lieu of. And we really are asking for nature-based solutions and the natural working land scenario to be prioritized, even though they're new to the scoping plan process. I think that's its own telling piece of evidence that nature and all the fuzzy, squishy things that happen out there in the non-human world were tough to inventory and tough to categorize and tough to catalog. And so the previous scoping plans didn't treat with this realm of our climate resilience adequately. And that's not controversial to say. We've now come a long ways. We have CARB's own model. We'd like to play with that model. But we have the recommendations from a really great team of expert advisors that I had the privilege of sitting with over in the Natural Resources Agency, who gave us carbon targets for these things that are already valuable in and of themselves. So everything that we're recommending here is not only good for the goose and good for the gander, it also has a carbon target. So it's perfectly appropriate to include in a request for the implementation of the 2022 scoping plan.
Thank you, Matt. And noting for the public that these materials, including this resolution, are posted on the CARB EJAC portion of the
Correct.
website. Thank you.
Yeah, we've been talking about this for a long time. And I think of all our resolutions, this one has the benefit of going through a full legislative and a full design process with a team of expert advisors who were surprisingly humane and considerate of vulnerable communities. I think some divergence here. We heard about forest offsets earlier today, and The notion that forest offsets can be fixed, that's not really included in here. You'll see some specificity around, what I don't know that we can personally, and some of the experts that we worked with, I don't know that we can stop wildfires, even though wildfires are a major component of our climate risk, but we can save everybody's home, and we can provide escape routes and biodiversity wildlife corridors to save all of our non-human partners. And so we have, there's some specificity there with regards to the forest measures. But other than that, most of these resolution whereases reflect the recommendations of the 1757 Advisory Committee.
Thank you. Okay, looking for discussion from the committee. And again, noting this has been brought to the committee previously. So any additional?
Can you scroll that down, Matt?
Yeah. I don't have control on it. Yeah, we want to see. This was the part that folks hadn't seen yet.
Yeah.
And I think this does highlight, or I don't know what it does, but it calls out a problem with the scoping plan and its focus on carbon. All of these things have their own benefits, and they all protect human communities, but that we can also still meet our climate goals without leaving human communities out and providing welfare to the same companies that got us into this mess. And certainly no amount of land use investment can offset the most vital thing that we need to do, which is the cessation of the burning of fossil fuels for our energy portfolio. But we can do both.
Thank you. Comments, discussion from the committee? Martha Dina, was that you?
No, I just can't see if there's any hands up, so.
Oh, there are none.
I'm almost afraid to ask a question. So, one, I do want to thank Matt for the work and for getting us here. And if there are no questions or comments, I would just move that we adopt the resolution.
I second. It's Kevin.
Great.
Is there any public comment?
Yeah, I'll take public comment at this point. So I've got a first and a second, and no additional discussion from the committee.
And I do want to say that we should give special thought about how we package all of these resolutions for the new EJAC as part of their transition, so that there is, some historical memory and the ability to carry forward some of this work into the new scoping plan, and that maybe this new scoping plan process can be more of a co-creation process and do the pre-scoping with the EJAC, so we can have some better alignment on the goals that we do share about addressing climate and protecting Californians' most vulnerable communities and ensuring affordability and all of those other things that, the environmental justice community knows very well as being mostly working class communities.
Thank you. All right, seeing no hands up from the committee members, and with a first and a second on the table, I think that takes us to public comment on this item before we take a vote. I'm looking virtually. Seeing no hands raised at this time, we'll give it a moment.
Did we make the motion already?
I'm sorry, who was that?
Did we
Yeah,
make a
Matt,
motion?
we made, motion's already been made and seconded. We're just waiting for.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right, seeing no virtual hands raised and no one in the room, that concludes public comment on this item. Noting for the record, I believe that Ray Leone has joined us So Ray, I did call roll call, so I'll just note that on here. And we will move to a vote on the motion to adopt the Natural Working and Lands Resolution. Martha Dina made the motion and it was seconded by Kevin Hamilton. I'll now do a roll call for vote. Martha Dina Arguello.
Yes.
Juan Flores.
Yes.
Dr. Catherine Grupa. Kevin Hamilton.
Yes.
John Harriel Jr. Tom Helm.
Yes.
Thank you, Tom. And noting for the record also, I did roll call. I missed you then, but I've got you now. Matt Holmes, go ahead.
Yes.
Thank you. John Kevin Jefferson III.
Yay.
Ray Leon.
Aye.
Luis Almeida. Jill Sherman Warren. All right, we might have lost Jill, but given that, the motion passes.
My apology, technological problems here and the mute. But yeah, well, I would have supported the motion.
Thank you. Apologies. We can note that also in the record. Thank you. Okay, that concludes this item. We will now move to agenda item number 10, the July 17th, 2025 EJAC public meeting minutes. Any discussion, revision of the minutes? These were posted on the CARB website and also distributed to members in advance, so we won't take any time here to go through them. There are a number of pages. But seeing no hands raised, no discussion on those, I'll look for a motion and a second to adopt these and we'll move to public comment.
I move to approve.
Thank you, Matt.
Second.
Sorry, who was that? That was
I think
fast.
that was Tom.
Thank you,
I
Tom.
think that was him.
The second was Ray.
Oh, it was Ray. Thank you, Ray.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. All right, we'll move to public comment on this item before we take a vote. So public comment on the July 17, 2025 EJAC public meeting minutes. Looking to the public, seeing no hands raised. Noting for the record, we have about 25 virtual attendees at this point. And no public commenters in the room. Give it just a moment. Okay, that concludes public comment on this item. I will do a roll call vote for that. Martha Dina Arguello.
Aye.
Juan Flores.
Yes.
Bueno.
Hey, dice el tocayo que everything's done.
Somebody to go on mute. Let's see. Thank you. Dr. Catherine Grupa. Kevin Hamilton.
Aye.
John Harriel Jr. Tom Helm.
Yes.
Matt Holmes.
Yes.
John Kevin Jefferson III.
Yes.
Thank you. Ray Leon. Ray, if you are speaking, we can't hear you. Thank you. Luis Almeida. Jill Sherman Warren. Okay. The motion passes. The minutes are adopted. We'll move now to the August 14th EJAC public meeting minutes. And noting for the record, we are doing these votes now because we didn't have a September meeting of the EJAC. That was the joint meeting. So we're catching both of these at this point. Any discussion on the August meeting minutes? Okay, I'll look for a motion.
Move to approve. Kevin.
Kevin.
I second the motion.
All right, Tom, I think you got it that time. All right. Got a first and a second. I'll now do roll call vote for this one. Martha Dina Arguello. Martha Dina, you might have been on mute.
I was, yes, I voted
Okay,
yes.
thank you. All good. Juan Flores.
Yes.
Thank you. Dr. Catherine Grupa. Kevin Hamilton.
Yes.
John Harrell Jr. Tom Hill.
Yes.
Matt Holmes.
Yes.
John Kevin Jefferson III.
Yeah.
Ray Leon.
Aye.
Luis Almeida. Jill Sherman Warren. All right, the motion passes.
Yeah, that's
Please
a
put
yes.
it-
I put it on. Yeah, sorry about that. I'm just having real trouble with technology right now. That's a yes.
I'm sorry. Thank you. Yes, noted. Thank you, Bob. All right.
Yeah, something.
I see it. Thank you for calling that out. I was looking down. Appreciate it. Yes, so noting for the record, that was Luis, and he voted yes on the meeting minutes. So again, that one passes, and that will take us to our agenda item number 16, CARB announcements. I'll turn that over to CARB staff.
Hey, thank you, Jane. Hi, everyone. My name is Christabel Kamadu, Equity Analyst in the Office of Environmental Justice, Tribal Affairs, and Border Relations. Thank you all so much for today's discussion. I would like to provide some announcements on upcoming events of interest for EJAC and public awareness. These upcoming events are listed in today's meeting agenda on CARB's EJAC webpage and on the screen, so everyone can see what is upcoming. Please note that the application period to join CARB's Research Screening Committee closed on October 15th, and candidates will be contacted by December 15, 2025 to schedule an interview. On October 21st from 9:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m., CARB will be hosting a public workshop on the Drive Forward Light Duty Vehicle program. This workshop will provide potential updates to California's next round of light duty vehicle emission standards for 2030 and beyond. On October 21st from 5 to 7 p.m., CARB will be hosting an evening community meeting on clean transportation incentives for a cleaner California. On October 23rd to the 24th, from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., CARB will be holding a board meeting. Please note that the Research Division will provide an update on the satellite methane program. On October 29th from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m., CARB will hold a remote-only public workshop on updates to the California Cap and Invest program, formerly Cap and Trade. CARB staff will provide an overview of recently signed legislation, Assembly Bill 1207 and Senate Bill 840, that provide direction on the Cap and Invest program and discuss related potential updates to the Cap and Trade regulation. Staff will request written feedback following the workshop through 11:59 p.m. Pacific Time on November 12, 2025. A link to submit written feedback will be posted to the Cap and Invest meetings and workshops webpage. On October 31st from 9 a.m. to 10:30 a.m., CARB will be hosting a public meeting on proposed updates to health endpoints for use in CARB's health analysis. From October 31st to November 31st, CARB will be accepting public comments on the Research Division's proposed health endpoints for health analysis document. On November 5th, from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., CARB will be hosting a zero emission showcase and ride and drive event in Oakland. On November 6th, from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., CARB will be holding a joint board meeting with the California Transportation Commission and California Department of Housing and Community Development. On November 13th, CARB is having a public workshop for Draft 2025 Cargo Handling Equipment Technology Assessment. On November 20th through the 21st, from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., CARB will be holding a board meeting. Thank you, and I will now return it back to Jane.
Thank you. All right, we will now move to next steps and closing remarks. I will turn that over to our co-chairs to discuss.
Well, so
Jane-
much.
Oh, I'm sorry. I
Go
wanted to ask a
ahead.
quick question about the announcements. It seemed to leave out the sort of significant workshop on biofuels that CARB is hosting, November 6th. Well, just in case anybody's listening, November 6th, CARB is hosting a really important biofuels workshop and land use change that impacts communities like ours. Be advised. I guess you can Google it.
Thank you, Matt Holmes, for that flag. We will make sure that we update our table. So we appreciate
You
you
bet.
flagging it.
Thank you for the addition, Matt. All right, back over to you, Martha Dina.
Well, first, before I say anything, any other committee members want to add anything? No, okay. Well, our future is uncertain, as we know. This is our last official meeting of the year. There will be perhaps some sub-quorum meetings, and I do encourage us to have those sub-quorum meetings because there is still lots of open questions in terms of how CARB will move forward with our advice and with the scoping plan. And I just want to say, first I want to thank all the CARB staff and the consultants and everyone who has supported this committee. Over the years, for the 16 years I've served, there have been many staff and certainly this iteration of staff. And I want to thank them all for being understanding as we, with my flexible view of time, deadline. So I know that can be challenging. And we're in really difficult times, and we're seeing many of the hard-won progress we've made, whether it's our organizations, our communities, or at CARB being unraveled, and the devastating impact that has when you watch your life's work being unraveled. So it's moments like this that really call for us to do something different. It calls for us to stand together, especially when it's hard. And we want to invite CARB, Chair Sanchez and Dr. Cliff and Rajinder and the scoping plan team to co-create with us to get past our differences and actually have a conversation. Our communities understand resilience and persistence. We've had to. And in that same spirit, we want to bring to this partnership, and we have been trying to bring to this partnership for many, many years, because this is a project that matters. Public health matters, the climate matters, and the air we breathe matters. And we also understand that environmental justice itself is being targeted, and that it does require courage, and it will require a lot more of us in the years to come. And we're also holding that in our communities. Our communities are under attack in so many different ways, and it will require that we show up in a different way and that we work with the agency in a different way, because we appreciate the attacks that you're under. We are under those same, if not stronger, attacks every day. So protecting and strengthening the EJAC isn't just about preserving this committee. It is about ensuring that CARB's success truly reflects the voices and realities of the people most impacted. And we invite the leadership of CARB to take this partnership seriously and value it, because you have a lot of expertise here and with the broader community. And no program is perfect. It can be improved. It can be fixed. But if we refuse to listen to any voices that don't verify our own reality, then we are no better than the people who are currently eroding our democracy. So with that, I will stop talking and invite any other EJAC members if they want to make any closing comments.
Thank you, Martha Dina. Look into the committee.
I would just like to say, let's continue the journey in the spirit of Mr. Sun. He says, "He who is prudent and lies in wait for an enemy who is not will be victorious." Let's continue to fight the fight.
Thank you. Ray Leon and then Luis.
Yeah, I think that's important to note, and thank you, Marta, for making that statement and that notion about, you know, we're all from California. We're all dealing with some stuff. In the neighborhoods in California, there's a little more stuff going on, right? Like actual assaults happening. I think we got to stand together, stand strong, but I think take advantage of the situation to really get California to get to the next level without any shenanigans, with an honest dialogue, and taking advantage of the partnership that we have now. Having all of us environmental justice leaders, come together to participate with the agency. I mean, that's unseen anywhere else. You know how busy we are. I mean, there's a lot of things. There's a lot of injustices that we got to deal with on a daily, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of underinvestments, in terms of many generations worth of impacts that are hard to intervene and recuperate and so forth. There's just there's too much. So it's important that we recognize the power we have together to make some of the changes, to set the example, continue to be the flagship of this country, especially now. So that's all I got to say.
Thank you, Ray. Luis Almeida.
We can always see the cup half full or half empty, but we are every single day, every single minute, every single second, we have an opportunity to do what's right. And for a while now, I've seen that the voice of environmental justice and people have been dedicating their lives to this, sometimes even generations, because like me and others, it's not the first generation we've been fighting this. But I think CARB mission is about everything that stands for EJ, that stands for many things, not just EJ. And one thing I'd like to leave as for consideration, new leadership, new opportunities, and CARB certainly experiencing these opportunities. We can't afford to isolate, to pick and choose, when we want to do EJ and with who. All the leaders in the EJAC are and have been doing their best to assure that they contribute to CARB's mission, despite opposing views. Maybe sometimes it's just people going in the same direction, utilizing different pathways to get there. But we can't afford not to be together in this journey, especially as some of my colleagues have said it more eloquently. This is not the time that we get to choose and pick. And this is a message for the leadership. This is a message for Steve Cliff. This is a message for the chair. This is a message for the board members. I really like to ask that they come together and put a message to their teams to make sure that they're not inadvertently peeling away what should be a unified front. There's a lot of things we agree with. There's a lot of things that we may not necessarily agree on the path, how we get there. There's things that are long overdue. But analyzing everything we're going through, everything we're facing as a state, as a country, we cannot afford to get. And I think that kind of direction can only come from the officer of the California Air Resources Board, from the chair and the board members to lead us through this, because I've had phenomenal experiences working with many divisions, managers, many staff that are eager to get involved, that are eager to want to do things because they live in our communities too. They face the same burdens, the same struggles, the same challenges. But oftentimes they're told, no, you can't do that. Or no, you're not following my direction. So you're not, we don't want your opinion. And so many deputies that I know have been there for a long time. And this must be a good reason why, because they probably want to do the right thing. But I think there has to be a message from the leadership to get the entire California Air Resources Board, at minimal, we need to maintain these channels open. We need to give their rightful place to all these leaders that have dedicated their lives, their experiences to this process. And they were going to continue to do it. I know I certainly am, not going anywhere. I want to be here to be part of the cup half full. And we need to keep filling that cup half full, because at least in my personal experience, in our own endeavors and representing our own community, I've seen that cup sort of come to a halt. And I want to get to the business of continuing to fill that cup until we fill it up. And we create equal protections, fair protections for all. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Luis. Kevin Hamilton. Kevin, I think you're on mute.
Yes, I am. I just want to echo the comments of my colleagues and stand in agreement. We recognize clearly the political dangers of our existing society. And coming from a state, the state of Ohio, where things are very different. In the 40 years I've lived in California, it was 45 years now, I have come to appreciate the openness of the state and the willing to challenge itself on a regular basis. My thoughts now are around how do we keep that label, that independence, our name, our reputation. We do it by continuing to do what we do and not reflecting or overreacting, or even reacting in many cases to attacks that are directed at us, remembering always that we are the 5th or 6th biggest economy in the entire world. There are only 4 or 5 folks, including the United States, above us. There is no reason for us to back down to anything or anybody other than for politics. And today I heard, at least translated in my mind, some fear that what this body might do in questioning sort of the as is within CARB's side on carbon crediting and offsets and how that works, that this is not the time. It's always the time. The time is when the time is, and this is the time to question that. And somebody who taught me to write years and years ago, that has allowed me to generate literally millions of dollars for nonprofits I've worked with and worked for. We all fall in love with our own stuff. So CARB has had its own stuff around this particular issue for quite a few years now. They've hugged it, squeezed it, loved it, told everybody that this is the way. I've seen people cry over it at a podium. I'm talking about cap and trade as it moves forward. And we have it. Legislature says we're going to continue it. So we are. But that doesn't mean we can't create a tool, create a program that meets the needs of all residents in California, and that equally serves all residents in California. And right now, that program serves a microcosm of all the residents in California. So we've seen some changes in the legislature directed at CARB and some at our energy friends and transportation friends, but most heavily at CARB. CARB has been tasked with developing a lot of new information around this field. And so this is a critical time for the EJAC and CARB to work closely together. And I echo Martha's call for early action. By the way, if this is deja vu from the last scoping plan, where several of us were calling out early action. The time is now to start moving forward and thinking about what we did before, what we did well, what we didn't do well, and how can we fix the things we didn't do well and do better. So, at any rate, thank you, everybody, and hopefully we will see each other before next March. If not, happy New Year to everyone.
Thank you, Kevin. Martha Dino, I'll go back to you.
No, I think we said it all. And like I said, we may be having some subcore meetings, and hopefully we will be hearing a response to our letter soon.
All right. Thank you all very much. Right on time. The time is now 2:00, and that concludes our meeting today. We are adjourned.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane.
Thanks, Jane.
Rest of the
Thanks,
week.
Ashley. Thanks, Bobby.
Yeah, and Bobby and team. Yes.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.